Chapter 393. The auspicious hour has arrived. Smoke is drifting in the air, the lights are shining brightly, and the bride and groom are ascending to the flower hall. After the ceremony, Wang Zhong, the butler in the main hall, sang loudly. The most important part of the wedding ceremony, had finally arrived. All the guests turned their attention to the two newlyweds in red. Mr. and Mrs. Li sat on the main seat and looked at the newlyweds with joy in their hearts. Mr. Li's right hand that was stroking his beard couldn't help but tremble slightly. It could be seen that his heart wasn't calm at the moment. In the main hall, of course, there were many people of noble status who were closely related to the Li family. They sat on the side and watched the ceremony, such as Li Chengqian, Li Tai, Li Daozong, Princess Hejian, Qin Qiong, Qing Yaojin, and so on. Let's welcome the newlyweds, the first bow to heaven and earth. After getting a nod from Mr. and Mrs. Li, Wang Zhong sang at the top of his voice solemnly. As early as the northern and southern dynasties, it was a fixed ceremony for couples to bow to each other. In the northern areas before the Tang Dynasty, couples bowed to each other as a ceremony, and it was held in special houses decorated with green curtains. After the Tang Dynasty was founded, the term bow to heaven and earth officially appeared. The three bows in the ceremony were inseparable from the ancient idea of the unity of man and nature in China. During the spring and autumn period, Laozi summarized the things in the world into three categories: heaven, earth, and man. He thought that although man was the master of all things, heaven and earth were the carrier of production and life. Therefore, when getting married, they should first bow to heaven and earth to express their gratitude to heaven and earth. At the same time, they prayed that heaven and earth could ensure that the newlyweds' children would be safe and healthy. In addition to heaven and earth, parents were also important factors in one's life. Therefore, the ceremony was also an important part of the ceremony. Li Zishuan felt excited and refreshed as this was the first time he got married. He held Han Yushi's hand and solemnly bowed to the outside of the house. He came to the Tang Dynasty for no reason. Maybe it was heaven's fault that he came to the Tang Dynasty. After going through such a strange thing, Li Zishuan still had a certain level of respect for heaven and earth. Second, bow to the parents. There was no need to say anything more. He had to sincerely bow, not only for the previous owner of this body, but also for himself. Husband and wife bow to each other. Li Zishuan looked at Han Yushi with an expression. Through the thin knee cover, he could still see the outline of her flower-like face. He was looking at Han Yushi. How could Han Yushi not be looking at him? This handsome man in front of her had given her too much happiness and too much romance. To be able to marry such a man, Han Yushi truly felt that she was the happiest and luckiest woman in the world. After looking at each other for a moment, the two of them seemed to have some kind of tacit understanding and bowed to each other. The ceremony is complete. Send the bride to the bridal chamber. Wang Zhong heaved a sigh of relief. Thankfully, nothing went wrong. As the MC of the wedding, he had practiced these few lines in private for a long time. He was so nervous just now, but fortunately, he managed to hold on. Li Zishuan pursed his lips and looked at Xiao He and Xiao Shi holding his wife as they walked out of the hall to the new room in the west courtyard. Ha! Today is my son's wedding. Thank you for coming. We will start the banquet now. Everyone, please eat and drink well. Li Jingma stood up with a smile and cupped his hands to the guests in the room. As mentioned earlier, the Li family was quite far from the Han family. Li Zishuan definitely wouldn't be able to make it back before noon with such a huge entourage. Therefore, the formal banquet was arranged in the afternoon. As for the guests who arrived in the morning, naturally, they wouldn't be starved. At noon, fruits and snacks were provided. Ha! Old Master Li is too polite. We will definitely eat and drink well. Ha! Your family's delicacies are famous in Chang'an City. I, Old Qing, am here today and I won't be polite. To be honest, I, Old Qing, haven't eaten since last night. Ha ha! Madman Ching, you are so shameless! Ah! Wherever the father and son of the Ching family were, there would be joy. These two clowns, old and young, could liven up the atmosphere wherever they were. There were 2 banquet tables set up in the hall of the Li residence to entertain the distinguished guests. However, how could old Ching, who came from the wind and went in the rain, be willing to drink in the house? Under his organization, a group of generals found a table in the courtyard and sat down, starting a drinking contest. The sound of finger-guessing, laughter, and scolding resounded throughout the venue. Old Ching pushed the atmosphere of the wedding banquet to its climax. When the others saw that the dukes and princes didn't care about their image and ate and drank to their heart's content, they had nothing to worry about. Therefore, the wedding banquet became more and more lively. The entire Li residence became lively. Laughter and finger-guessing could even be vaguely heard outside Yongla Lane. As the groom, of course, he had to be dragged around to toast. However, Li Zixuan had cushions. They were Qing Chumo, Qin Huayu, Yuqi Baolin, and Li Huairan. The 4 of them were Li Zixuan's groomsmen today, also known as groomsmen in modern times. They needed to accompany Li Zixuan to toast with him. Cho Ox, you're the one with the highest alcohol tolerance among us. Remember to stand in front later. If you do well today, we'll call it even. Otherwise, hee, you know what I'm going to say. Li Zixuan put his arm around Qing Chumo's shoulder and chuckled. Everyone could hear the threat in his words. On the wedding night, every moment of the night was worth 1,000 gold. Li Zixuan didn't want to be drunk. How could good wine be more important than beautiful women? Qing Chumo looked at Li Zixuan's fists and thought about how Li Zixuan was able to tie with his father in a martial arts competition. Qing Chumo instantly made a decision. Haha. No problem. We are brothers. There's nothing to talk about. Besides, old Qing, love to drink the most. Thus, the 5-man team started to fight in the jungle. Qin Huayu was in charge of making the first move, pouring wine. Qing Chumo, Yuqi Baolin, and Li Huairan were in charge of crazily attacking, drinking wine. Li Zixuan was in charge of stealing the beam and swapping it for the guests and killing them, serving mixed wine to the guests. In an instant, their efficiency exploded. From the group of civil officials in the main hall to the group of military generals outside, these guys ran through all of them. Next was the group of ordinary guests. Li Zixuan and his 4 teammates also ran through all of them. Finally, he came to the most special guest table of the day. It was the 44 students of the Imperial College. It should be 38 now. Li Tai, Li Huairan, Qin Huayu, Qing Chumo, Yuqi Baolin, and Iron Egg weren't there. The 38 students sat together. Li Zixuan, dressed in his wedding attire, came to the front, raised his wine glass, and laughed. I'm very happy that you guys could come. I like the thank you teacher book that you guys gave me. No matter where you guys go in the future, let's drink to this first today. Cheers to all of you. This glass of wine wasn't mixed with water, but it was genuine drunken immortal. In fact, when he was toasting just now, he didn't mix any water in the wine for the guests, who were especially close to the Li family. With his current skills, drinking 1 or 2 liters of drunken immortal was no problem. Students toast to Sir. I wish Sir a happy marriage. Meng Wenhao stood up and led the rest of the students in a toast. Meng Wenhao was actually the one who organized the group gift today. Chapter 394. They bowed to heaven and earth at dusk and drank until the lights were lit. When the banquet ended, it was almost midnight. Many people were drunk. Li Zixuan pretended to be dead drunk and lay on the table in the corner of the courtyard, refusing to move no matter what. The groomsmen couldn't pull him away, so they could only leave this knucklehead guy and go drink alone elsewhere. Li Zixuan laid on the table and saw that no one was paying attention to him. Then, he took advantage of the dim lighting and used the orchid butterfly steps to enter the west courtyard. His speed was so fast that no one could match him. Ah! Young master, have you finished drinking? At the door of the bedroom, she saw a black shadow sneaking towards them. She was so scared that she wanted to shout to catch the thief. However, the black shadow was already in front of her in a blink of an eye. She took a closer look and recognized that it was Li Zixuan. She patted her chest, let out a sigh of relief, and asked, Yes, I've finished drinking. The banquet has ended. How is it? Is Yushi asleep? Li Zixuan looked into the room and answered absent-mindedly. He did not notice how alluring she was when she patted her chest. Otherwise, he would definitely look around. Not yet. Young mistress has been waiting for you. Young master, I'll make you a bowl of hangover soup. She said considerately. No need. I'm not drunk. Ask the kitchen to bring me some bath water. Li Zixuan sniffed and realized that his body was full of the smell of alcohol and sweat. He could not help but frown. Regardless of whether other grooms would take a bath before the wedding, he had to take a bath. This was because he was slightly obsessed with cleanliness and had a bit of obsessive-compulsive disorder. That's right, he was a virgin in his previous life. Oh, young master, please wait for a moment. She knew her young master's personality and did not refute. She agreed and went to arrange it. Sigh. You go with him. Also, get some food from the kitchen. Yushi has waited for so long, she must be hungry. Got it, young master. He stuck out her tongue and also ran away. Li Zixuan laughed proudly and then opened the door gently and entered the room. Han Yushi was dressed in red and sitting in front of the bed. When she heard the movement, she quickly looked at the door. Through the knee cover, she could see the outline of a familiar man. Moreover, when Li Zixuan was talking to the two maidservants outside the door, Han Yushi had vaguely heard it. Husband. Wife, don't move, I'll help you. Li Zixuan chuckled and scurried to the front of the bed. Then, he picked up the jade rui and carefully removed the cloth covering Han Yushi's head. Even though he had already seen Han Yushi's peerless appearance in her wedding dress, Li Zixuan was still stunned when he lifted the cloth covering her knees. Her hair was tied up high, revealing her long neck that was as white and delicate as a swan's. A pair of simple teardrop-shaped earrings flashed with a silver light. Her eyelashes opened outwards, like a young girl in Jiangnan's rain town slowly opening up an umbrella, arching in a moving arc. Her face was lightly powdered, maintaining her natural beauty, but adding a touch of charm. The red button-down shirt, coupled with the high-waisted skirt, outlined two perfect arcs of Han Yushi's figure, especially the full, soft breasts above. From Li Zixuan's vantage point, he could even clearly see a white ravine. Beautiful, she was simply too beautiful. Li Zixuan was once again mesmerized by Han Yushi. Husband, haven't you seen enough after so long? Han Yushi blushed and pouted coquettishly. Not enough, not even for a lifetime. Ouch. Li Zixuan said infatuatedly. Suddenly, he felt something warm in his nose. Something flowed out. He reached out and wiped it, only to find that he had a nosebleed. He couldn't help but feel embarrassed. In his previous life, he also had a nosebleed when he kissed his girlfriend for the first time. After that, his girlfriend often teased him about it. He didn't expect that he still couldn't change this bad habit after transmigrating to the Tang Dynasty. Ouch! Husband, you're bleeding, I'll get someone to call the doctor. When Han Yushi saw that Li Zixuan's face was covered in blood, she thought that Li Zixuan was injured. Her eyes immediately turned red. Cough, cough. I'm fine. I'm just too excited after seeing my wife's beautiful face. Li Zixuan took some tissue paper and comforted her gently while wiping his nosebleed. Oh my, aren't these ancient girls too naive? Are you really okay? Han Yushi blinked her beautiful eyes and asked suspiciously. I'm really fine, just a nosebleed. Cough, cough, the weather is hot recently and it's easy to get heaty. Li Zixuan said nonsense. Oh. Han Yushi nodded her head, seemingly believing him. Young master, the water is here. Young master, the food is here too. Just as Li Zixuan was brewing his emotions and preparing for the next wave of attacks, the voices of two maidservants came from outside the door. Heh, she's my wife anyway. Why should I be afraid of her running away? Bring it in. Li Zixuan stood up and shouted outside. Then, he looked at Han Yushi and said, Wife, you must be hungry after waiting for so long. Eat something first. I'm stinking of sweat and alcohol. I need to take a bath. Han Yushi wanted to say that she didn't mind, but she was afraid that it would be too embarrassing to say it, so she only whispered, Okay. Li Zixuan smiled and went out to take a bath. With his wife in mind, Li Zixuan took a bath quickly. In less than 15 minutes, he had finished scrubbing. He changed into soft pajamas and went to the inner room. He found that Han Yushi had also finished eating and was wiping her mouth with a silk handkerchief. Hey! Wife, have you finished eating? Yes. Thank you, husband. Han Yushi was indeed very hungry after waiting for so long. Li Zixuan asked someone to prepare food for her as soon as he came in. This meticulous consideration touched Han Yushi from the bottom of her heart. Silly girl, what are you thanking me for? I told you earlier that from now on we are husband and wife. I won't let you suffer any grievances, and you don't need to thank me. Do you understand? Li Zixuan looked into Han Yushi's eyes and said seriously. The two maidservants serving at the side saw that the couple was about to get into the main act. They looked at each other and went out quietly. They closed the doors and windows for Li Zixuan. Husband, you're so nice. Hee. What's this? Wife, you'll know that I can be even better in the future. Haha, it's time for us to drink wine. Here, wife, take it. Li Zixuan poured 2 small cups of wine and handed one to Han Yushi. Okay. Han Yushi smiled sweetly and took it. 2 arms crossed. One was thick and strong and the other was slender. There didn't seem to be anything wrong with it, as if they were born to be together. Chapter 395. With a wife like this, I will never leave you. I will accompany you in life and death, and we will grow old together. In the bedroom, Li Zixuan looked into Han Yushi's eyes and said solemnly under the candlelight. Han Yushi's eyes immediately became misty. She said firmly, With a husband like this, I will never leave you. I will accompany you in life and death, and we will grow old together. This sentence was like a confession, but also like a vow. The two of them looked at each other and smiled, then drank the wine in one gulp. Ahem, ahem. Wife, look, it's getting late. Let's rest. Li Zixuan looked around and finally revealed his wolf's tail. Before Han Yushi got married, Mrs. Qin had more or less told her some general knowledge about men and women. When she heard the word rest, her face instantly became as red as a big red cloth, so red that water could drip out. Okay. Han Yushi responded in a voice as soft as a mosquito. Li Zixuan was overjoyed. He quickly pulled Han Yushi to the bed and sat down excitedly. Wife, you're so beautiful. Such a beautiful woman would only belong to him in the future. Li Zixuan was intoxicated as he looked at the peerless beauty in front of him. Han Yushi was shy and happy, but she said, A woman's face is like a shooting star in the sky. It's short and beautiful. Youth is fleeting and youth is fleeting. So what if I'm beautiful now? One day, I will become an old woman with a face full of wrinkles. When that time comes, will my husband despise me? Li Zixuan smiled, took Han Yushi's 2 small hands, pressed them to his heart, and said very seriously, I'm sorry. He said seriously, Yushi, ever since I met you, no one else can be like you. You can make me drunk with wine, chase after you with horses, swing my sword for you, and fall for you with my heart. People call me crazy, and I have no regrets even if I die. Even if you have white hair one day and your face is past its prime, I will still hold your hands like today and give you the gentleness of the world. I'll hold your hands and give you my tenderness. These words of love really had a fatal attraction. It made Han Yushi's maiden heart, which she had cherished for many years, melt in an instant. Her eyes also became a little blurred. Her soft body couldn't help but fall into Li Zixuan's embrace. Husband, to be able to hear your words, even if Yushi were to die right now, she would be satisfied. Han Yushi buried her head in Li Zixuan's chest and said emotionally, "Little fool, are you so easily satisfied? You're not allowed to talk about death. We have to live well. We have to be husband and wife for the rest of our lives. We have to be the happiest and most loving couple in the Great Tang. If I don't have you, how can I live?" Li Zixuan hugged Han Yushi's fragrant and soft body and continued to say sweetly and affectionately, "Nen, this concubine will listen to my husband. This concubine wants to be husband and wife with my husband forever." Han Yushi's arms exerted more strength as if she wanted to rub herself into Li Zixuan's body. Oh, summer clothes weren't thick to begin with. Hugging like this was actually no different from kissing skin. Feeling the warmth from the beauty body in his arms and that indescribable wonderful touch feeling, Li Zixuan instantly reacted. "My husband, you." Sensing that something was wrong below, Han Yushi, who had received a period of pre-marriage education these few days, was stunned for a while before she realized what it was. She immediately broke free from Li Zixuan's embrace, as if she had been electrocuted. Then, like an ostrich, her head was deeply embedded in his chest. She was so embarrassed that she didn't dare to raise her head again. Ugh! Li Zixuan was extremely embarrassed. Just as he was about to explain that this was a natural reaction, he was suddenly dumbfounded again. Because the great beauty in front of him was a little naked, gone, naked. Han Yushi's clothes today were a pair of lapels paired with a high-waisted skirt. In this era, there were no elastic belts, so the skirt was tied to the top of the chest part. Those who had watched Tang Dynasty TV dramas should know how easy it was to go, out clothes like this. Just now, Han Yushi's struggle in Li Zixuan's arms made the laces at her chest, which were not tightly fastened, become messy, and the skirt naturally fell down 2 inches, so, just Li Zixuan felt that this was the most beautiful scenery in the world. Nothing, no power, could move his eyes away from it. He even wanted to bury his eyes in it. "Husband, why are you staring there? So embarrassing." As if she had felt Li Zixuan's burning gaze, Han Yushi raised her head and immediately realized that something was wrong. She hurriedly covered up her exposed, spring, light. Gulp. Gulp. Li Zixuan's eyes were fixed on the place where Han Yushi's hands were covering. His Adam's apple couldn't help but move. "Wife." Li Zixuan's voice had actually become somewhat hoarse at this moment. My husband." Han Yushi did not dare to look directly at Li Zixuan's invasive eyes. When she thought about what she was going to experience next, she was both afraid and somewhat expectant. At this moment, her mind was blank. In the end, she simply closed her eyes and did not think about anything. Seeing Han Yushi raise her small face and close her eyes, looking like she was at his mercy, how could Li Zixuan, whose blood had already rushed to his head, hold it in? He roared and pounced on her. 50,000 words omitted here. Accompanied by a cry of pain, the big red curtain suddenly trembled and swayed. Shadows rose and fell, but one could hear a burst of rough, gasping, mixed with several almost inaudible, gasping breaths. After a long time, the room returned to tranquility, leaving only the flickering candlelight. In the outer room, the 2 little servant girls who were asleep had long been woken up. Their faces were flushed red. Outside the room, the moon in the sky seemed to feel shy and hid behind the dark clouds. Chapter 396. Early morning. The first ray of sunlight shone across the horizon and began to spread its enthusiasm and brilliance to the vast land. Those who were truly working hard for their livelihood had actually woken up early, and those who did not have to worry about food and clothing would also be awakened by the light at this moment. The windows in ancient times were all covered with very strong oiled paper, but this thing did not block the light. At this time, there were no curtains, so once the sun rose every day, the room would become bright. Even if you wanted to continue sleeping, you would be shaken awake by the strong sunlight. Comfortable. Li Zixuan was also awakened by the sunlight. He rubbed his eyes and felt a weight on his right shoulder. He lowered his head and saw a fair beauty with her head resting on his shoulder. She was still in a deep sleep. Sleeping Beauty, this was the real Sleeping Beauty. Han Yushi's brows were slightly furrowed, probably because she was hurt last night. Her hair was messy, and coupled with her exquisite facial features and peerless appearance, Li Zixuan could not help but have an illusion. This was probably a fairy in the sky who fell asleep beside him after playing in the mortal world, right? Moreover, this fairy was not wearing clothes. His right hand touched the fairy's smooth jade back, and his eyes secretly glanced down at the peaks, ridges, under the quilt. A certain part of Li Zixuan's body had the most common, physical, natural reaction that most men would have in the morning. Han Yushi seemed to have sensed something. She twisted her body and snorted. Li Zixuan had a guilty conscience and was so scared that he immediately did not dare to move. A moment later, it seemed that the Han Yushi in her dream could not bear the dazzling sunlight outside. She stretched lazily, then rubbed her eyes with her right hand and opened her beautiful eyes. Suddenly, their eyes met, and there was infinite flirtatiousness. "Ah, hubby, why are you looking around again?" After a while, Han Yushi realized that Li Zixuan's eyes were always looking under the quilt. She quickly pressed down the brocade quilt with her hand and said coquettishly, Cough cough, you can't blame me for this. It's mainly because my wife is too beautiful." Li Zixuan's body stiffened. He tried his best not to let the crime tool touch Han Yushi because he realized that he wanted it again. This was not good. Han Yushi would not be able to take it. "Husband, why are you so good at sweet-talking? Isn't that right?" Han Yushi rolled her eyes coquettishly and said playfully, "My dear wife, you're wrong to say that. What I'm saying is not words of love, but the truth." Li Zixuan said seriously, "I won't listen, I won't listen, I won't listen." Han Yushi saw that Li Zixuan's mushy words of love came out of his mouth, and each one was more powerful than the other. She quickly covered her ears and didn't dare to listen anymore. She was afraid that if she heard too much, her body would go soft and she would throw herself into his arms. After tormenting for so long last night, she couldn't even muster the strength in her body now. "Ha ha!" Li Zixuan looked at her cute appearance and couldn't help but laugh. "Young master! Young madam! Do you want to wash up now?" At this moment, Xiao He's voice came from outside. The little maidservant also went to fetch water after hearing the movements inside. She didn't expect that the two inside had not woken up yet when she came back from fetching water, so she couldn't help but urge. Because the sun was already high up in the sky, she had to urge. It's actually already this time. It's over, it's over. Father and mother will definitely think that I'm not a good wife." Only then did Han Yushi notice the sunlight outside. Thinking that the bride had to serve tea to her parents-in-law in the morning, she was so anxious that her tears almost fell. It's fine, it's fine. My father and mother are very easy to talk to. They definitely won't blame you." Li Zixuan hugged her body and comforted her gently. "How can it be fine? It's all your fault. Last night you were so. Han Yushi used her little fists to pound Li Zixuan's chest non-stop. She still didn't give in. "It's my fault, it's my fault. Wife, let's get up quickly. It's not too late to mend the pen after the sheep is lost." Han Yushi's little strength was like a massage when she hammered on his body. Li Zixuan laughed comfortably. "Humph. Then husband, quickly close your eyes. I'm going to put on my clothes." As Han Yushi spoke, she picked up Li Zixuan's big hand and covered Li Zixuan's eyes. Hey! It's not like I didn't see it last night, Li Zixuan muttered. You're not allowed to look. Han Yushi was about to cry from anxiety. Okay. I won't look. I won't look. Wife, quickly put it on. Li Zixuan begged for mercy. Only then did Han Yushi feel relieved. She swiftly lifted the brocade quilt and began to prepare to put on her clothes. Unexpectedly, just as she sat up, a sharp tearing pain came from her lower body. She couldn't help but cry out in pain. Ah! It hurts. Wife, what's wrong? Where does it hurt? Hearing Han Yushi's cry of pain, Li Zixuan hurriedly opened his eyes and came over to ask with concern. It's all because of you. Husband, quickly close your eyes. Okay. Close. Wife, why don't you not get up? I'll talk to father and mother. It'll be fine. Li Zixuan said with heartache. Last night was indeed his fault. In many transmigration novels he had read in his previous life, after the male lead transmigrated to ancient times, he would usually marry a 14 or 15-year-old girl. Then, because the male lead felt sorry for the female lead who was too young, he would usually treat it as Lu Xiaohui and wait a few years before breaking the female lead's virginity. Li Zixuan actually planned to do the same yesterday, but being alone, man, widow, woman, in the same room, and Han Yushi was so beautiful, he really couldn't hold back and committed a crime. Now that he thought about it, he was indeed too beastly. How can that do? Husband, you're talking nonsense. If I do that, others will definitely say that I don't know etiquette behind my back. Han Yushi shook her head and objected. After saying that, she gritted her teeth, endured the pain, and began to get up and put on her clothes. Li Zixuan couldn't help but sigh. This ancient girl was not only beautiful, but why was her personality so good? After the two of them put on their clothes, they quickly washed up under the service of two little maidservants. Then, Li Zixuan brought Han Yushi to the front yard. Along the way, all the servants would respectfully greet them when they met. Hello, young master. Hello, young madam. As Li Zixuan listened, he suddenly felt that there was one more person in his life who was bound to him for life. This feeling was really wonderful. When Han Yushi heard these people call her young madam, she couldn't help but feel happy that she had finally entered Li Zixuan's life. All of this was like a dream. It seemed that her life was going to be brand new from now on. Chapter 397. Supporting the limping Han Yushi, they slowly came to the main hall. Li Jingma and Mrs. Li were already waiting there. The two elders were all smiles and did not show any displeasure because the two of them had come late. Lan who was wearing a new set of clothes, was beside them. Ever since Li Zixuan and Han Yushi came in, the little girl's eyes had been staring at their faces. Housekeeper Wang Zhong had already prepared tea. Li Zixuan and Han Yushi took the teacups, knelt down in front of the two elders, and raised the teacups above their heads. The two of them said in unison, "Father, Mother, please have some tea." Okay. The two elders received the teacup with smiles on their faces. They placed it by their mouths and took a sip before putting it aside. Mrs. Li hurriedly glared at him and said, "Xian why aren't you helping Yushi up? The ground is so hard." Cough. He's starting to feel sorry for his daughter-in-law so soon? Li Zixuan couldn't help but think. However, he wouldn't be jealous because Han Yushi was also his darling. So what if there was one more person feeling sorry for him? He was thinking nonsense in his heart. Li Zixuan's hands did not stop. He reached out and was about to pull Han Yushi up, but Han Yushi waved her hand and refused. Han Yushi knelt on the ground and cupped her hands at the two elders. Father, Mother, Yushi woke up too late and made father and mother wait for a long time. Sigh. What a stubborn girl. When Li Zixuan heard the reason, he couldn't help but feel sorry for his good wife, who always took the blame for herself. In the end, it was because he was too mischievous yesterday that caused Han Yushi to wake up late. Silly child. What are you talking about? Hurry up and get up. Mother will tell you in detail. Before Li Zixuan could plead, Mrs. Li had already stepped forward and pulled Han Yushi up. She held Han Yushi's hand and said seriously, "Son, in ancient times, son didn't just refer to a son. It could also be used to refer to a daughter. We don't have so many rules in our family. You can get up whenever you want. No one will say anything about you. Before you married into our family, Xian would only wake up in the afternoon. In any case, we don't have to worry about food or water, so it's fine even if you guys wake up a little later. Isn't that right, Master?" In fact, Madame Li could not wait for the two of them to wake up later. As an experienced person, Han Yushi had just entered the door when she saw that something was wrong. She knew what had happened to them last night. Madame Li, who wanted to hug her fat grandson, naturally hoped that her son and daughter-in-law would communicate feelings more in the room. Ugh! When Li Jingma saw that his wife had led the fire to him, he was stunned. Then, he felt a dangerous gaze from the side. He quickly said, "Ahem, Yushi. Your mother is right. You can wake up as late as you want in our house. Actually, the people in our family don't like to wake up early. It's not good for you to wake up early." In fact, Li Jingma's thoughts were the same as Mrs. Li's. He also wanted to have a grandson as soon as possible. However, in order to please his wife, he let his imagination run wild and said a little more. "Ah?" Hearing Li Jingma's words, Han Yushi was dumbfounded. How did things turn out like this? It wasn't written like this in the storybooks. The situation that the neighbors usually talked about when a certain family's daughter married into a certain family wasn't like this. What happened to the intrigue between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law? What happened to waking up early to work and perform well in front of mother-in-law? Why was it all a mess? How could there be parents-in-law who encouraged her to laze in bed and wake up late? Han Yushi felt that this world was a little messy. Ahem. Wife, why aren't you thanking father and mother? Li Zixuan couldn't help but find it funny when he saw his wife's confused look. Previously, he was also doted on by his parent. But then again, he really felt that he was very lucky to be able to meet such a good pair of parents. Thank you, father and mother, for your magnanimity. Han Yushi reacted and said hurriedly. Hee, good child, this is mother's greeting gift to you. Take it. Mrs. Li's smile had never stopped since her son got married yesterday. Today, she saw that her son and daughter-in-law were loving and inseparable. Moreover, this daughter-in-law was gentle and obedient. She couldn't help but be even more satisfied with this marriage. She secretly thought that her son had good taste. Li Zixuan saw clearly from the side. His mother was going to give the jade bracelet that she had always been wearing to Han Yushi. He had also taken a closer look at that jade bracelet previously. It wasn't an ordinary item. It should be a family heirloom. Now that his mother could take this out, it meant that she approved of this daughter-in-law. Thinking of this, Li Zixuan smiled and glanced at Han Yushi. He was happy for his wife from the bottom of his heart. Han Yushi still understood that she didn't dare to reject an elder's gift. She was overwhelmed by the unexpected favor and took the jade bracelet. She bowed and said, "Thank you, mother. Yushi will definitely take good care of this jade bracelet." It's fine as long as my son likes it." Mrs. Li waved her hand and smiled. Then, she looked at her husband. Her meaning was self-evident. Father Li trembled and quickly took out a key from his sleeve. He went forward and handed it to Han Yushi. "Yushi, this is the key to the first floor of our family's warehouse. It's all your dowry. Take good care of it in the future." Li Jingma's move was very generous. Although the bride's dowry in this era was all the bride's private property, under normal circumstances, when a woman just married the man, a portion of the dowry brought by the woman would first be put under the man's name for business purposes, who would hand over all the dowry brought by the woman to his daughter-in-law the next day. This. Han Yushi was shocked. One had to know that the dowry she brought was a total of 50,000 to 60,000 strings of cash. Faced with such a large sum of money, she couldn't help but be at a loss. Li Zixuan touched her arm and gestured for her to quickly take it. Han Yushi quickly took it and said solemnly, "Thank you, father." "You're welcome. You're welcome." After the tea ceremony, Li Zixuan gathered all the servants in the residence and planned to introduce them to Han Yushi. After all, she would be the mistress of the house in the future. How could she not recognize all the servants? "Come, my wife, let your husband introduce you to his family." "Thank you, husband." Li Zixuan pulled his wife to the front yard and looked at the more than 100 servants in front of him. He said loudly, "I don't need to introduce this person next to me, right? In the future, my wife will be the mistress of the house. Her words represent my words. You must all carry them out seriously. Our Li family treats people generously, but we will never allow people to offend our superiors. Otherwise, there will be no place for you in this huge Li residence. Do you all hear me?" "Yes, we hear you." The servants and maidservants all answered in unison. In fact, there was no need for Li Zixuan to personally instruct them. They were so comfortable in the Li family that they were not willing to leave. They would not offend their superiors. "Come, Yushi, let me introduce you one by one. You already know this person. He is our butler, Uncle Wang. This is Uncle Wang's wife." Chapter 398. Li Zixuan introduced Han Yushi to all the servants in the house. Han Yushi was very generous. Every time Li Zixuan introduced someone to her, she would say a few words cordially. After that, she would reward them with some money, embroidered cloth, and other small gifts. Almost everyone had one. It was obvious that Han Yushi was prepared in this aspect. All kinds of rewards were suitable, not too much, not too little. It was just right. Mrs. Qin must have taught her before the wedding. The servants in the house did not expect the bride to be so generous. They were all very grateful. Of course, Han Yushi also prepared a gift for Lan. It was a set of exquisite head ornaments, probably worth tens of thousands of dollars. The little girl received such a beautiful gift and was overjoyed. She kept calling out, "Sister-in-law, sister-in-law." After these things were done, it was almost noon. The young couple simply ate breakfast and lunch together. Li Zixuan could not help but sigh in his heart. He was an otaku who liked to sleep in. This was the rhythm of assimilating with his wife. Li Zixuan's side was peaceful, but his legend was still circulating in the Jianghu. Cough cough, it should be the grand wedding yesterday that was still remembered by the people of Chang'an. It was passed down by word of mouth. From the betrothal gifts to the bride's makeup, followed by the luxurious wedding procession and the luxurious wedding lineup, and finally the national carnival that Li Zixuan single-handedly planned. Wave after wave, it affected everyone's hearts. Li Zixuan took this opportunity to show the people of Tang Dynasty a textbook grand wedding. The genius planning creativity and the national carnival made countless onlookers who witnessed it at the scene gasp in admiration from the bottom of their hearts. TSK, you didn't see it yesterday. The Li family's wedding was so *king grand. I, Old Yang, only now understand that the wedding banquets I attended in the past were all *t. In a restaurant, a middle-aged man in red was reminiscing to his 3 companions at the table. "Oh, Old Yang, you went to the wedding banquet of Li County's men yesterday? Old Yang, how did you squeeze in? I wanted to give gifts yesterday and get a free meal, but I didn't get it. I didn't get it either. There were too many people. But fortunately, I used a bouquet of flowers to exchange for a portion of chicken. It was worth a lot of money." Yesterday, I, Old Yang, used 3 strings of money to buy a seat for the banquet. That's why I'm lucky enough to witness this unprecedented wedding with my own eyes. Old Yang smirked. 3 strings of money. Old Yang, you're really generous. Hey, Old Huang, you're really short-sighted. No wonder you can't make much money all year round. Old Yang took a sip of wine and proudly said, "You guys don't know, but the value of the food and wine in the banquet yesterday was definitely more than 15 strings of coins. The wine was the best wine and the dishes were all the signature dishes of the drunken immortal restaurant. Don't you think it's worth it to spend 3 strings of coins to enjoy such a big meal? You can also see the wedding ceremony inside from the flowing banquet. You didn't see how grand the Lee residence's wedding was yesterday. No way? The Lee family's banquet is so sumptuous? Yeah. How much money did the Lee family have to fork out for so many tables?" The other 3 were obviously boorish people who didn't understand romance. They weren't interested in the grand wedding ceremony that old Yang mentioned at all. They only cared about the food. Therefore, old Yang's blabbering was destined to be like playing the lute to a cow. Seeing this, old Yang said resentfully, "What can I say about you guys? The Lee family doesn't care about money at all when they hold such a grand wedding. Do you know that? They're just looking for fun. Do you know what fun is? Whether it's the betrothal gifts or the bride escort, do you see how much money the Lee family spent? Why would they care about this little bit of money? If they really cared, they wouldn't have given out newspapers and chickens for free. Hey, you guys don't believe me when I say you're stupid. The Lee residence's wedding banquet yesterday was really lively. In a luxurious restaurant, a few rich businessmen chatted as they ate. As they talked, they couldn't help but talk about yesterday's legendary wedding. Yeah, I heard that it wasn't just the crown prince. The king of Wei and the princess went personally. Even the emperor sent someone to send congratulatory gifts. Wow. This means that Li Xiannan not only has a wide circle of friends, but he's also favored by the emperor. Yeah. This Li Xiannan not only knows how to do business, but he's also good at being an official. I heard that the students of the Imperial College went to send him congratulatory gifts yesterday. They gave him quite a lot. Haha. Li Xiannan is really competent as an official of the Imperial College. Pinkong Room, Baihua Building. Although we don't have the wings of a colorful phoenix, our hearts are as one. Dote on her, love her, protect her, love her. We're willing to be 2 birds in the sky and 2 branches on earth. The gods and Buddhas in the heavens are worshipped by the people and enjoy the incense of thousands of families. I, Li Zishuan, will also receive the blessings of thousands of people and enjoy endless flowers on my wedding day. In an embroidery pavilion, a beautiful young woman in light pink looked at the lines of small words on a piece of paper in front of her and couldn't help but murmur. These were the poems that Li Zishuan recited at the Han family manor and the words he said at the wedding. Now, these few lines had already spread in certain circles in the capital. Why can't I, Gu Fian, meet such a good husband? I don't know what good deeds this Han Yushi accumulated in her previous life to be able to marry Li Xiannan. I'm so envious of people with poor lives. This woman was Baihua Building's top courtesan, Yan Er. She had even gone to watch Li Zishuan's wedding procession yesterday. Li Zishuan's wedding yesterday, and those poems made many young ladies of the boudoir look at themselves in self-pity and envy. Changle Palace. In the bedroom on the 2nd floor, Changle supported her chin with her hand and looked at the makeup-urging poem that Li Zishuan composed yesterday on the table. She couldn't help but think of the grand and lively wedding she saw with her own eyes at the Li residence yesterday. The sea of flowers and the words that Li Zishuan said to Han Yushi made Changle feel deeply intoxicated. In this era that didn't understand romance, no girl could resist yesterday's romantic wedding. In the heavens, we're willing to be lovebirds. On earth, we're willing to be intertwined branches. Brother Shaoxian is so good to Sister Yushi. He even spent so much effort on the wedding. I'm afraid that in the future, there won't be a wedding that can surpass this grand occasion, right? I don't know what kind of husband-father we'll find for Changle in the future. Will there be anyone who dotes on her like Brother Shaoxian? After a long time, Changle sighed softly and muttered to herself, Li Zixuan didn't know that he had stolen a poem from Li Shangyin to hasten the makeup, but it had harmed countless young ladies and caused them to fall into lovesickness. Many young ladies began to use him as a benchmark and set standards for themselves to choose a husband. Chapter 399. After lunch, the couple returned to the west courtyard to rest. After all, it was summer, and the sun was at its hottest at noon. No one had the energy to do anything serious. However, Lan Er's unintentional words in the morning scared Li Zixuan so much that he broke out in a cold sweat. Brother, Lan Er wanted to play with sister-in-law this morning, but father and mother stopped me. Lan Er will go secretly next time. This way, father and mother won't know. Brother, what do you think? Li Zixuan wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and thought to himself, in the future, every time I enter the house, the first thing I have to do is lock the door from the inside. Otherwise, if my little sister suddenly barges in and sees something she shouldn't see, where will I put my old face? Maybe my wife will be traumatized because of this. I have to take this seriously in the future. Although he used to make up a story about a door demon to trick Lan Er into knocking on the door before entering, who knew if Lan Er would forget about this and barge in one day? On the way back to the house, Li Zixuan kept reminding himself that for his future, sexual happiness, he must remember to lock the door at all times. Husband, father and mother have such good temperaments. This concubine was worried that father and mother would be unhappy. When they returned to the house, Han Yushi took the initiative to pull Li Zixuan's arm and said excitedly. Although she had been to the Li residence before and had a few pleasant interactions with father and mother Li, she had interacted with them as an outsider after all. Today was the first time she met her parents-in-law as a daughter-in-law, and the process was unexpectedly smooth. This made Han Yushi heave a sigh of relief. At the same time, she also sighed at how kind and benevolent father and mother Li were. As Li Zixuan went to lock the door sneakily, he smiled at his wife and said, "Of course, my father and mother are gentle by nature. They are the kind of good people who have never been jealous of others. Wife, you are so gentle and lovely. Of course, my father and mother like you and are willing to treat you well." Hearing Li Zixuan's sweet words, Han Yushi was slightly shy and said, "Husband, you're making me happy again. I think father and mother are only treating me like this because I'm your wife. But even so, I am still very happy. From now on, not only will my husband dote on me, but there will also be 2 more people who will care about me. Ever since I married my husband yesterday, I feel that even the scorching sun has become lovely and amiable." Simple words of love were the most moving. When Li Zixuan saw Han Yushi's cute appearance, he couldn't help but step forward and pull her into his arms. He intimately placed his chin on her forehead and said gently, "Our days have only just begun. Wife, you're already so excited. What will happen in the future? Do you remember what I told you earlier? We will be the most loving and blissful couple in the great Tang, and everyone in the world will envy us." Han Yushi meekly pressed her cheek against Li Zixuan's chest and said softly, "But I already feel that I'm the happiest woman in the world now. My husband's talent and the grand wedding that you prepared for me yesterday, countless women are envious. Yushi is neither talented nor virtuous, and I'm not from a prestigious family. I'm so worried that I'm not worthy of my husband's deep affection. In the past, I didn't care about the pain of losing because I didn't get it. Now that I have such a good husband and such good parents, I'm really worried that my husband will despise me." Sigh, this wife of his was really gentler than water. Little fool, what did my husband say last night? With a wife like this, I will never leave or abandon you. I will accompany you in life and death and grow old together. Wife, you're already very good. I like you very much. You mustn't belittle yourself in the future. If you're really the daughter of one of those wealthy families, I won't take a fancy to you." Pfft. Han Yushi giggled and looked up to ask, "Why do you say that, my husband? Yushi heard that all men in the world regard marrying a woman with 5 surnames as a supreme honor. Why don't you take a fancy to me? Haha. That's because they're stupid. Rich young ladies with 5 surnames are used to being arrogant and domineering. Although they're indeed gentle and pleasant on the surface, they still can't change their unruly and willful nature. They're not as gentle and virtuous as my wife, nor are their thoughts as pure as yours. As Li Zixuan spoke, his claws secretly reached for the protruding part under the S line. Han Yushi was listening attentively to her lover's analysis. However, she was completely unaware of the wolf's claws invading her body. When she heard what he said, she said shyly, "I'm not as good as you say. Hee. We already met openly last night. Whether my wife is good or not, my husband knows best in your heart." Li Zixuan chuckled sinisterly. His hands naturally didn't stop. That wonderful touch really made him unable to let go. My husband, how can you say such embarrassing things in broad daylight? How embarrassing! My husband, why are your hands there? Han Yushi said coquettishly. Suddenly, she felt something strange behind her and hurriedly tried to break free from Li Zixuan's wolf's claws. Li Zixuan's eyes were sharp and his hands were quick. He increased the strength of his arms and didn't let his wife break free from his embrace. He smiled sinisterly and said, "My wife didn't rest well in the morning. Why don't you continue to rest now?" Hearing Li Zixuan's tone, how could Han Yushi not know what Li Zixuan meant by rest? She hurriedly tried to push Li Zixuan away with her hands and said, my husband is in the middle of the night." "Husband, that won't do. It's still daytime, and that place is still hurting." Ugh. Li Zixuan, who originally only wanted to tease her, didn't expect his wife to take it seriously. When he heard Han Yushi's slightly sobbing pleading voice, Li Zixuan blamed himself slightly and hurriedly said, "Haha, my wife, what are you thinking about? This rest is not that kind of rest. I'm afraid that you're tired. I really want you to rest for a while." "Really? Of course, it's more real than real gold. My husband is so good. Haha. My wife, go and take a nap." The couple came to the bed and prepared to take a pure afternoon nap. Suddenly, how could I forget about this? It's so embarrassing. My husband, quickly turn around. Don't look. It was Han Yushi who had lifted the brocade quilt. A cold plum blossom stood proudly and entered her sight. She was immediately embarrassed and hurriedly pulled Li Zixuan's body, wanting her lover to quickly turn around. Han Yushi woke up in a hurry this morning and forgot to cut this thing down and put it away. Who drew the plum blossom on this bedsheet? Look at the dots of plum blossoms, the color is bright and the layers are distinct. The snow-white silk next to it is like white snow, setting off the proud plum blossom that bloomed alone to the extreme. It has a profound meaning and is extremely interesting. It's as if the proud plum blossom is right in front of your eyes. It's really a rare painting scroll. Sigh. My wife, don't stop me. Let me collect it properly and pass it down to my descendant. Li Zixuan was very proud in his heart. It couldn't be helped. Any man would be proud in this situation, but his face was serious, as if he was really appreciating the painting. My husband, you're too bad. I beg you, don't look, it's so embarrassing. This bad guy with a wicked smile in front of her looked at the white silk that was stained with her precious first night's red blood and looked like he was investigating. He kept praising Ling Han for blooming alone. It was simply asking for Han Yushi's life. Han Yushi felt that her soul had left her. She was really ashamed and angry to death. She pulled Li Zixuan with all her strength and said, Chapter 400. After teasing the shy little lady for a while, Li Zixuan stopped while he was ahead. He walked to the side and turned his back, letting Han Yushi clean up the proud and aloof plum blossom alone. Otherwise, wouldn't this girl die of embarrassment? After nearly half an hour, Han Yushi cut the plum blossom, put it away, and changed the new bedsheet. Li Zixuan saw that her face was so red that it was about to drip water, so he didn't say those strange words to tease her. He just held her slender arm and said, "Okay, wife, take a nap." This nap can not only relieve fatigue, but also slow down the aging of the skin. Han Yushi's eyes lit up, and she said excitedly, "Really? Hey, of course, it's true. Go to sleep." Li Zixuan stroked Han Yushi's soft hair and said softly with a smile, "In order to cultivate his wife to be a sleeping goddess like him, this guy also put in a lot of effort." "Yes, yes." Han Yushi nodded, took off her shoes happily, and climbed into bed to sleep. Youth and beauty were the most attractive poison for all women, and Han Yushi was no exception. Li Zixuan smiled, took off his shoes, and lay next to Han Yushi, ready to take a pure afternoon nap. Although it was a hot summer outside, there was an ice basin in the room to cool down. Not only was it not hot, but it was also a little cool. The husband and wife were covered with a thin quilt, hugging each other, and fell into a deep sleep after a while. Li Zixuan was very obedient this time because he knew that Han Yushi was injured. At this time, he could not just care about his own selfish desires and ignore the pain of others. He could not bear to torture this cute wife like this. "Don't worry. Ha ha. What are the Empress and my beloved concubine talking about? They are actually chatting so happily? Even though I'm far away, I can still hear the laughter in the hall." Li Er came to Li Zheng Hall after the morning court. He planned to have lunch with Empress Zhangsun, but he didn't expect concubine Yang to also be here. She was even talking and laughing with Zhangsun. "Your concubine greets your majesty." When the two beauties saw Li Er coming, they hurriedly got up and bowed. Li Er waved his hand and said, "No need to be so courteous, haha. Zhen is just walking around, you can continue chatting. It just so happens that I can listen from the side." Perhaps Emperor Li Er, who worked day and night on state affairs, could only find some fun and relax in the harem. Knowing that Li Er came here to freeload and listen to gossip to relieve his boredom, Zhangsun considerately called a palace maid and ordered her to go to the imperial kitchen to have lunch sent over. Then she sat beside Li Er and said with a smile, "Your Majesty, I was just talking to my sister about yesterday's wedding." "Oh? It's that brat again. I've also heard about yesterday's wedding. That stinking brat actually used Tang daily to advertise his wedding. Yu Shernan even came to me yesterday to complain." When Li Er heard this, he immediately ridiculed in annoyance. Zhangsun covered her mouth and laughed, saying, "It was because of Li Er's advertisement on Tang daily that yesterday's wedding was so lively. Your Majesty, you don't know, but until now, the people of Chang'an City are still talking about yesterday's wedding." "That's right. I heard that the Li family received tens of thousands of bouquets of flowers yesterday. Just the chickens alone were given out more than 10,000 set. If we calculate according to the usual price per set, the Li family lost more than 10,000 strings of cash. It's no wonder that yesterday's wedding was so lively." Concubine Yang heard this and interjected with a smile. "Haha. That's not how the accounts are calculated. That brat is ruthless. The cost of the chickens from Drunken Immortal Restaurant is only about 200 copper coins. Giving out more than 10,000 sets, that brat only lost 2,000 to 3,000 strings of cash." Li Er had more information than concubine Yang, who had lived in the palace for a long time. He shook his head and analyzed. Concubine Yang covered her mouth and laughed. "After hearing what your Majesty said, it's true. That Li Er is really cunning. He only used 2,000 to 3,000 strings of cash to make tens of thousands of people in Chang'an City celebrate his wedding. This business is really worth it. Ha. I've said it before, that brat is most suitable to be a profiteer." At this time, the palace maids had already served the dishes. Li Er, Zhangsun, and concubine Yang sat down and started eating. Zhang Sun suddenly thought of something and smiled, saying, "Your Majesty, the most popular thing in Chang and city now besides Li Er's wedding yesterday is the wedding poem that Li Er composed." Li Er asked curiously, "Oh? Doesn't that brat hate making a fuss? He can even compose poems? Let Maid Guanyin read it for me." Your Majesty, please wait a moment." Empress Zhongsun got up and went to the small table next to her, taking a piece of rice paper with tiny words written on it. Although the poem was good, as the empress of a country, of course, she wouldn't be so bored as to memorize a love poem. Then, she softly read, "Last night's stars and last night's wind, on the west side of the painting building, on the east side of the Kasha Hall. I don't have the wings of the colorful phoenix, but our hearts are as one. Next seat, send the hook of spring wine to warm up, separate chow shoot to cover the red candles. I'll listen to the drum to answer the official, walk the horse and the orchid to turn the purring. I don't have the wings of the colorful phoenix, but our hearts are as one." Good poem. Although Li Er didn't compose poems, it didn't mean that he didn't understand poems. He seriously tasted it for a while, and his eyes became brighter and brighter. Finally, he clapped his hands and praised, "This poem reminds me of the scene when I first met the Empress and my beloved concubine. At that time, I was often fighting on the front line, but I always had you in my heart. Perhaps this is what it means to be as one. TSK, Li Zishuan's poem is good. It can be considered to have written out my thoughts." Li Er shamelessly took Li Zishuan's masterpiece for his own use and used it to express his feelings to his wife. Empress Zhongsun and concubine Yang looked at each other, somewhat confused by Li Er's sudden romance. "We sisters will remember your Majesty's kindness in our hearts and will never forget it." Zhongsun reacted more quickly. Seeing that the atmosphere was a bit stagnant, she quickly cooperated with Li Er and said emotionally, "Sister is right. As the ruler of a country, your Majesty is busy with state affairs all day long. You can still treat us sisters like this. This concubine is satisfied in this life." Concubine Yang wasn't stupid. After Empress Zhongsun finished speaking, she also understood that Li Er was borrowing poems from them today, so she quickly cooperated. They couldn't not cooperate. They couldn't let Li Er embarrass himself, right? That would hurt old Li. Ha ha. "Empress, my beloved concubine, are too polite. I have the two of you in this life, and my heart is satisfied. Ha." The old pervert Li Er lied against his conscience. Today, after old Li saw Li Zishuan's romantic poem, he didn't know what was wrong with him, but he also wanted to be romantic for his two wives. However, Li Er, who was good at both civil and martial arts, was too far away from Li Zishuan in the field of romantic flirting. He almost made the atmosphere stiff. Chapter 401. Husband, did you wake up long ago? Last night, after being tormented by Li Zishuan for most of the night, Han Yushi's whole body was about to fall apart. In the morning, if she didn't think that she had to get up to serve tea to her parents-in-law, she wouldn't get up even if the sky fell down. She was really sleepy. She fell asleep not long after lying in bed at noon. Li Zishuan was afraid that the sunlight outside would affect his wife's sleep, so he specially put on the divine weapon that he used to sleep in, the eye mask, for Han Yushi. Therefore, Han Yushi slept until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. As for Li Zishuan himself, of course, he didn't wear the eye mask. This was the only one in the family. In other words, he was the only one in the family who liked to sleep in, so there was no need to get so many. In fact, Li Zishuan wasn't very sleepy. Although he was tormented until the second half of the night last night, this guy was the type who became more and more energetic. If it wasn't for his wife's first time, this beast might have tormented until even later. There were 4 great joys in life: sweet dew after a long drought, meeting an old friend in a foreign land, the wedding night, and the time to pass the imperial examination. Li Zixuan, who had just experienced one of the four great joys of life, was only excited and excited in his heart. How could he be sleepy? So he only slept for an hour before waking up. The reason why he didn't wake Han Yushi up was because a beauty looked really good when she slept. Although he couldn't eat it now, he could secretly kiss his wife when she was asleep, take advantage of her mouth, and gently touch her with his claws. It was also a different kind of fun to take advantage of her hand. As for the other reason, Li Zixuan thought that since his wife could fall asleep, then he would let her sleep as much as she wanted. If she slept too much during the day, she would naturally not be able to sleep at night. At that time, they could talk about life together. It had to be said that ever since she took care of her virginity last night and obtained the first blood, this fellow was now eating marrow, knowing, taste, essence, worm, brain, filled with dirty thoughts. The pure and kind Han Yushi had fallen into the devil's claws, just like that. Perhaps it was because Li Zixuan's claws were too strong, or perhaps it was because she had really slept enough. Han Yushi stretched lazily and opened her eyes. She realized that it was pitch black in front of her. Then, she felt that there was something covering her eyes. After she reached out to pull off the blindfold, she saw her lover staring at her with his eyes. She was shy and happy, so she asked, "And, seeing that you were sleeping soundly, I didn't have the heart to wake you up. How was it? Did you sleep well?" Li Zixuan put away his dirty thoughts just now and said, That's not right." How could he say that he had dirty thoughts? Wasn't it natural for him to want to do shameful things with his wife? Li Zixuan indicated that they were a legal couple. A legal couple. This guy finally convinced himself in his heart. I slept very well. Husband, what is this? It looks weird." Han Yushi held the eye mask and asked curiously. This thing is called an eye mask. It's worn on the eyes. This is a good thing. If I hadn't helped you put this on just now, you might have been woken up by the sunlight outside," Li Zixuan said proudly. Han Yushi heard this and widened her eyes. She said speechlessly, "Husband, did you specially make this thing to sleep during the day?" "That's right." "Wife, what's with your expression?" Han Yushi looked at the eye mask, then looked at her lover and said hesitantly, "Husband, I know that you have great wisdom. The curved plow, the scooter, the paper machine, Hanyu Pinyin, and so on. These things that benefit the people were all invented by you. I am proud to be able to marry such a husband. But, husband, can you use your great wisdom on the right path?" This girl knows how to speak with restraint first and then praise later. Han Yushi praised Li Zixuan in the first half of the sentence, and then began to persuade Li Zixuan to turn over a new leaf. This was a typical case of restraining first and then praising later. Li Zixuan snappily pinched the little beauty's nose and said, "That's right. Who said that this eye mask is not the right path? Only when a person has a good rest can he work well. Only when he works well can he earn more money. With more money, he can live a good life. And this eye mask of mine can let people rest well. Do you think this thing is important? Is it the right path?" "Ouch. It hurts. Husband, let go of me first." Han Yushi removed Li Zixuan's hand from her nose, then smiled mischievously and said, "Hee. Husband, you're twisting words and forcing logic. Actually, you just want to use this to sleep in." Li Zixuan was furious. He hugged Han Yushi and was about to punish her. Twisting words and forcing logic? Who's twisting words and forcing logic? Say it again? Hee. Husband, stop scratching. It's itchy, ha. It's so itchy. Stop scratching. Stop scratching. Do you know your mistake? I know my mistake, Ha. Husband, let go of me. Han Yushi was scratched all over. Her long hair was scattered everywhere, and the front of her chest was also open. What a picture of a lazy beauty. Gulp. You can't let go even if you know your mistake. Li Zixuan glared and shouted. Before Han Yushi could react, His mouth had already moved closer. 50,000 words omitted here. Husband, why are you doing this in broad daylight? After a round of hugging, kissing, cough cough, of course, it was just a kiss. Li Zishuan couldn't bear to let his wife get hurt even more. Han Yushi's hair was messy, and her cheeks were red. She rolled her eyes at her lover and said coquettishly. In just 2 days of intimate interaction, she understood that Li Zishuan, who had always been sunny and upright, was actually so lecherous. It was just that she liked this kind of lecherousness very much. Ha ha. Wife, you mean that your husband can play tricks at night? Li Zishuan teased. No. Husband, you're bullying me on purpose. Han Yushi pouted and said aggrievedly. Ha ha. Wife, don't cry, kiss. No kiss. After Li Zishuan instilled a whole night of messy knowledge, how could Han Yushi not know what kiss meant? She hurriedly turned her face to the side, not daring to look at Li Zishuan again. In fact, she really didn't dare to kiss again. She was afraid that she would be unable to control herself and let Li Zishuan have his way again. Cough cough. Since you don't want to kiss, then we'll kiss in the future. It was getting harder and harder to coax his wife. Li Zishuan could only say gloomily. By the way, wife, turn around. I have something very important to ask you. Chapter 402. I won't listen, I won't listen, I won't listen. My husband must be lying to me again. Han Yushi covered her ears and shook her head with her back facing Li Zishuan. She had learned to be smart now and was always on guard against Li Zishuan setting a trap for her. Stop fooling around, I'm really not lying to you. Wife, quickly turn around, I really have something serious to tell you. Li Zishuan was speechless. Why didn't anyone believe him when he told the truth? He turned sideways and forced Han Yushi to turn around. Han Yushi said in disbelief, Husband, you really didn't lie to me? Muah! I didn't lie to you at first. I really wanted to tell you something serious, but since you don't believe your husband so much, then how can I disappoint you? He. Li Zishuan kissed Han Yushi's rosy little lips angrily and then smiled proudly. Bad husband, I knew you were lying. Han Yushi slapped Li Zishuan's chest in embarrassment and anger, trying to push him away. Wife, you still don't believe me? Li Zishuan pressed against Han Yushi's forehead and said with a smile. I believe. I believe. Husband, quickly say it. Looking at Li Zishuan's posture, how could Han Yushi not know what would happen if she said that she didn't believe him, so she quickly nodded. That's more like it. Li Zishuan chuckled and took the opportunity to touch Han Yushi's perky butt. Naturally, it caused the beauty to be coquettish, angry, again. Okay, I won't tease you anymore. Let's talk about serious matters. Li Zishuan sat up and leaned on the bed. Han Yushi saw that her lover really had something to say to her, so she quickly tidied her hair and leaned on Li Zishuan's shoulder and said, Husband, say it. Li Zishuan said seriously, Yushi, when did your last period come? Your menstruation? Han Yushi, who was waiting for Li Zishuan to get down to business, almost broke down when she heard this. Her first reaction was that Li Zishuan was deliberately teasing her again. Moreover, he was teasing her with such an embarrassing matter. This was too much. Husband, you lied to me again. How can this kind of shameful thing be considered proper business? Han Yushi was so angry that her eyes were a little red, and there was a trace of anger in her voice. Cough cough. Wife, don't misunderstand. I really didn't mean to make fun of you. Hurry up and tell me, this is really important to me. Li Zishuan had long expected that Han Yushi would misunderstand. After all, ancient girls were not as open as modern girls. This kind of thing was very embarrassing for them. In order to make Han Yushi believe it as soon as possible, he could only put on a solemn expression and explain it seriously. But husband, why are you asking such an embarrassing question? Han Yushi saw that Li Zishuan didn't seem to be joking. She was a little convinced, but she still asked hesitantly. Wife, don't ask about this first. Tell me first, and I'll tell you later. Li Zishuan waved his hand. Han Yushi stammered for a while and said embarrassedly, I should have my period on the 6th day. Phew! That's good, that's good. It should be fine. Li Zishuan heard and heaved a sigh of relief. That's right, Li Zishuan was calculating his wife's safe period. As the saying goes, 7 days before and 8 days after. Last night happened to be in the safe period. Although there was a probability of pregnancy during the safe period, the probability was much lower, wasn't it? Li Zishuan didn't intend to let Han Yushi, who was not even 15 years old, have a child so soon. This wasn't good for her body and the child's health. How did Li Zishuan know all this contraceptive knowledge? Although he was an engineering otaku in his previous life, he also had a girlfriend, okay? He had checked the basic knowledge that should be checked, although he was still a virgin in the end, because his girlfriend was afraid of pain. He also felt sorry for his girlfriend. In the end, the two of them didn't take that last step. Husband? What do you mean by fine? What were you mumbling about just now? Han Yushi saw that Li Zishuan kept saying things that others couldn't understand like a lunatic, so she asked hurriedly. Husband, I was just calculating whether my wife would get pregnant after we did that kind of thing last night based on my wife's period time. Knowing that he couldn't hide it, Li Zishuan also didn't want to hide it. He also wanted to take the opportunity to popularize Han Yushi's knowledge. Hearing Li Zishuan mention last night's consummation in the bridal chamber, Han Yushi was embarrassed. However, hearing that Li Zishuan could calculate whether she could get pregnant based on the time of her period made Han Yushi a little incredulous. Husband, you're talking nonsense. When that comes, what does it have to do with being pregnant? Hey, of course it has a lot to do with it. Generally, it's not easy for a woman to get pregnant in the 7 days before and 8 days after the arrival of her period. Do you understand? Li Zishuan began to give his wife a biology lesson. Oh. Han Yushi nodded as if she understood. Then, she saw her counting her fingers. A moment later, she exclaimed, if it's like this, then after we did that last night, wouldn't I not get pregnant? Hey, wife, what do you mean by that expression? Don't tell me you want to be a mother so soon? Li Zishuan poked her forehead and said in annoyance. Of course. Husband, you caused me so much pain last night. In the end, I couldn't get pregnant. What a loss. Han Yushi rubbed her forehead and said with an aggrieved expression. Li Zishuan almost vomited blood. How could things like giving birth to a child be calculated like this? Wife, you're still young. It's not suitable for you to have a child. If you give birth now, it's not good for you and the child. Husband, you're bluffing again. How am I young? The people in the village who are younger than me already have children, and I'm fine. Han Yushi pouted and said unconvinced. She felt that Li Zishuan was depriving her of the right to be a mother. Although it had been less than 2 days since she married into the Li family, Han Yushi had fallen deeply in love with this place because there were parents-in-law who doted on her and a husband who doted on her. Although her husband always liked to play tricks on her, she liked this kind of intimate feeling. Therefore, she was also eager to give birth to a child for her lover. Li Zishuan said that she was too young to give birth at this time. Of course, she was anxious. Wife, have you heard of how many pregnant women die of dystocia every year in Chang and City? Li Zishuan said with a serious expression. This. Han Yushi's face turned pale. Wife, even if you don't know the specific number, you should have heard of many similar cases, right? Han Yushi hesitated for a moment and finally nodded. Li Zishuan continued. When a woman is 13 or 14 years old, her body is not mature yet. How can she give birth to the next generation? At this time, the risk of giving birth is doubled. This is why more than 30% of pregnant women in Chang and City die of dystocia every year. Wife, you love me and want to give birth to a child for me earlier. I understand and am very grateful. But I, Li Zixuan, married Han Yushi because I like this person, not to marry a birth tool. No matter what, your safety is the most important. We can give birth to a child later. You and I still have a long way to go. Have you forgotten? We still have to be the happiest couple in the Tang Dynasty. In ancient times, the death rate of pregnant women in dystocia had always been high. In addition to poor medical conditions, another important reason was that women's childbearing age was too young. Li Zixuan could accept early marriage, but his wife had to give birth later. Chapter 403. After seriously teaching Han Yushi about physiology for nearly an hour, he finally made this girl understand the huge disadvantages of giving birth too early. Li Zixuan was about to let out a sigh of relief when Han Yushi's next sentence almost choked him half to death. Husband, how do you know so much about us women's affairs? Have you been studying this for many years? Li Zixuan was speechless. How could a man like him study women giving birth to babies every day? These were all things he saw on the internet or in novels in his previous life. Cough, cough. Wife, there's something I want to tell you, but you must not tell anyone. Li Zixuan was silent for a long time before he suddenly said with a struggling expression, Husband, please tell me. I promise I won't tell anyone. Han Yushi's eyes lit up and she quickly promised. Being able to share the secret in her lover's heart made her feel very excited. Looking at the flames of gossip burning in his wife's eyes, Li Zixuan was speechless. Sure enough, women liked to listen to such nonsense. It was the same in ancient times and modern times. My master once had a female confidant who specialized in medicine. She was especially good at treating women's illnesses. Back then, I had followed my master to the residence of that female senior several times. What I told you earlier was all from her medical note. Then, husband, what was the name of your master's female confidant? Did she end up with your master in the end? Han Yushi turned around and looked at Li Zixuan with sparkling eyes. It could be seen that she really wanted to know the answer to this question. Li Zixuan choked. He really wanted to say, Wife, you're digressing. We're talking about medical problems now. Why are we suddenly talking about emotional problems? A female confidant is ultimately just a female confidant. My master pursued the heavenly Tao all his life and had no interest in romantic relationship. Every time he met up with that female senior, it was only purely for medical discussions. In the end, it was a love lost, but heartless flowing water. That female senior was called Hong Luan. She was an expert in medicine and her attainments in medicine were not below my master's. Ah? How could this be? Why can't lovers be together? Senior Hong Luan is so pitiful. Han Yushi tearfully grabbed Li Zixuan's hand and said sadly. Li Zixuan looked at the beautiful woman's pitiful appearance and regretted that he had been too free just now. Asterisk cough cough asterisk that's right. What he said was all made up by this fellow. The main thing was that this fellow got a little carried away while chatting, and the topic got further and further away. Now that it was like this, it was a little difficult to clean up the mess. Cough cough. Although Senior Hong Luan has a favorable impression of my master, she has never thought of marrying him. Why is that? If you like someone, shouldn't you marry him? Han Yushi frowned and asked in confusion. What she didn't know was that in Li Zixuan's eyes, her expression was very cute and moving. Li Zixuan resisted the urge to kiss her and continued to talk nonsense with a serious face. Wife, not all the infatuated people in this world can be like you and me, having a smooth sailing life and finally getting married. Senior Hong Luan's original name was Gu Ziyuan. It was said that when she was young, she was extremely beautiful. However, because she was born with a red Luan aura, no one within 100 miles dared to marry her. Senior Hong Luan was heartbroken and changed her name to Hong Luan, determined not to marry for the rest of her life. Later, she ran away from home and visited a famous teacher. She was engrossed in medicine and helped the dying and the injured. By chance, she met my master by chance. They had a lot in common in medicine and became close friends. However, between the two of them, one had no interest in love, and the other didn't want to harm the other party because of personal feelings, so they were separated for the rest of their lives. After my master passed away, Senior Hongluan sat quietly in front of my master's body for a day and a night. Then, she took the zither that my master left behind and played a song before leaving silently. There was no news of her after that. In his previous life, he had accompanied his girlfriend to watch so many melodramatic and bitter dramas. Finally, he hadn't watched them in vain. A love story full of melodramatic and routine slowly came out of Li Zixuan's mouth. It was just that his master in the underworld had suffered. For no reason at all, his evil disciple had created a piece of gossip. If this story were to spread, then spiritual master Ling Su's illustrious reputation would be destroyed in an instant. Wu, husband, Senior Hongluan is so pitiful. Wu, husband, will you be like your master in the future and abandon me to pursue the heavenly Tao? Wu, I can't bear to part with husband. Han Yushi, who was born and raised in the Tang Dynasty, had never experienced the baptism of the melodramatic dramas of the later generations. The story that modern people felt was very melodramatic was instead an incomparably strange fate filled with twists and turns in her ears. Therefore, when Li Zixuan finished speaking, this lady immediately burst into tears and tightly hugged Li Zixuan, not daring to let go. Seeing his wife crying like a pear blossom bathed in rain, Li Zixuan couldn't help but feel a trace of guilt in his heart. He had gone overboard with his fabrications. However, the beautiful lady throwing herself into his arms and the wonderful feeling coming from her body made him feel secretly pleased. Especially since this era didn't have that kind of underwear. When Han Yushi pressed herself against him, Li Zixuan could immediately feel those two small nubs. At this moment, he hesitated. He didn't know if his nonsense was right or not. There were advantages and disadvantages. However, wasn't using this method to take advantage of his wife a bit shameless? Wife, don't cry, wife, don't cry. Husband will definitely not leave you. The way of heaven is vague. There are thousands of cultivators in the world, but how many of them can finally attain Tao? Mortals look up at the sky, there is no tomorrow, the moon hides, and the 4 seasons change. In the netherworld, all things follow the cause and effect. Eternity is the way of heaven. Husband, I don't cultivate the way of heaven, I only cultivate the way of humanity. With such a good wife, such good parents, and such a cute little sister, why would I, Li Zixuan, pursue the way of heaven? Wife, we have agreed that we won't leave each other and will follow each other in life and death. This sentence, I will do what I said. Li Zixuan originally just wanted to comfort Han Yushi, but as he spoke, he unknowingly brought up the way of heaven and the way of humanity. His master in this life had indeed spent his entire life pursuing the way of heaven. This point, what he said before was indeed true. Li Zixuan certainly scoffed at the illusory concepts of gods, demons, ghosts, and the way of heaven in his previous life. However, now that he had experienced such a bizarre thing as transmigration, these mysterious things like the way of heaven might really exist. But even if the way of heaven did exist, so what? Now that he had such a warm family and such a gentle and lovely wife, how could he abandon all the people he cared about to pursue the way of heaven, which might not even exist? In his previous life, when he played the Legend of Sword and Fairy 4, a sentence from the Fairy of Ninth Heaven at the end left a deep impression on him. If you want to cultivate the way of immortality, you must first cultivate the way of humanity. If you can't cultivate the way of immortality, how can you become an immortal? Therefore, no matter from any point of view, it was impossible for him to pursue the way of heaven with all his energy like his master. Otherwise, he would definitely not be in Chang'an now, but in Dragon Tiger Mountain. Really? Husband, you are so nice. Han Yushi raised her head and asked with tears in her eyes. Then, wife, shouldn't you give husband some rewards? Li Zixuan squinted his eyes and smiled evilly. His wretched appearance was just short of the word pervert written on his forehead. Oh no, husband, stop fooling around. It's time to get up. Oh no, the sun seems to be setting. We will definitely be laughed at by others when we go out. Chapter 404. Newlyweds always liked to be entangled together. Even if they didn't do anything, just whispering sweet nothings to each other, it was still quite addictive. The excitement of marriage and falling in love were obviously different, and it was even more so for the ancient people. Although the customs of the Tang Dynasty were more open, marriage was still a big matter and could not be avoided by parents and matchmakers. 90% of the couples would get married first and then fall in love. The husband and wife did not know each other before marriage. After marriage, they would slowly get used to each other. If they got used to each other well, they would be happy for the rest of their lives. If they didn't get used to each other, they could only change to another person. Of course, this referred to the man. So many people like to marry concubines. It was probably because they didn't get along well with the first wife. Li Zixuan and Han Yushi were lucky. Although they hadn't known each other for a long time, they had experienced a lot of things together. They met, knew each other, fell in love, and finally got married. Therefore, once the two of them got married, they were inseparable and couldn't be separated no matter how hard they tried. The young couple did some shameless things in the room and only left the room at 5 in the afternoon. Li Zixuan felt that Xiao He and Xiao Shi were looking at him strangely, as if they were looking at an animal. Li Zixuan opened his mouth and wanted to argue with the two maidservants, but after thinking about it, he decided not to. If he was an animal, then so be it. At least it was better than being single. During dinner, Li Zixuan found that there was an extra dish on the table. It was a dish that he had never seen before. It was a dish that had never appeared in the Li family before. Come, Xian, try this soup. It's very good for your health. Madame Li was full of smiles. She stood up and picked up the small bowl in front of Li Zixuan and filled it to the brim. Li Zixuan was speechless. He was just about to ask what kind of soup it was when his mother gave him a bowl. He felt that there was something wrong with it. The soup in front of him looked black. There were a few pieces of spring onion floating on the surface of the soup, and there seemed to be a few pieces of meat and bones at the bottom. Although the appearance was a little bad, it smelled quite good. Mother, what soup is this? How come I've never seen it in our house? Although his mother would not harm him, Li Zixuan still wanted to ask. After all, everyone was curious. This is a soup made from a few different types of meat and a few herbs that can clear away heat. This is my first time making this soup, so it might not look good, but it's especially good for the body. Xian, drink some. Mrs. Li blushed and said embarrassedly, Mother, this soup smells so good. Let me try it too. Seeing that Mrs. Li's expression was a little unnatural, she thought that she was embarrassed because it was her first time making such a soup. As a daughter-in-law, Han Yushi naturally had to stand up and support her mother-in-law at this time. In her opinion, even if the soup her mother-in-law made for her for the first time tasted terrible, she would just have to endure it. It would be fine as long as her mother-in-law was happy. Mrs. Li's expression froze. Mr. Li, who was next to her, moved his lips as if he wanted to say something. The atmosphere suddenly became a little awkward. Han Yushi blinked in confusion, not knowing what went wrong. Ahem, Yushi. It's my first time making this kind of soup, so I might not have a good grasp of the heat. Let Xian drink it. In the future, when I'm familiar with it, I'll make it for you. Mrs. Li saw that her son and daughter-in-law were looking at her hesitantly and hurriedly explained. After that, she glared at her son and said sternly, Xian, why aren't you drinking it? Do you want your wife to taste the soup for me personally? Brother, drink it quickly. If it tastes good, Lan wants to drink it too. Lan smelled the fragrance of the soup and wanted to get a bowl, but after hearing what her mother said to her sister-in-law, she immediately sat down and urged her brother to taste it for her. It turned out that his mother was using him as a guinea pig to test the new soup. But why did she have to make it so strange? Li Zixuan was a little confused, but since his mother had already said so, and there was a mischievous girl beside her urging him, it would be unmanly of him to refuse. Thus, Li Zixuan tragically became a guinea pig. He picked up the small bowl in front of him and drank the soup clean in a few mouthfuls. He also picked up a few pieces of meat and ate them. In the end, this guy even smacked his lips as if he was savoring the aftertaste. Delicious. Li Zixuan gave a thumbs up under the expectant gazes of the crowd and praised, "Mother, although this soup doesn't look very good, the taste is very good. Mother, you are really too talented. Even though it's your first time making it, you made it so well." This was definitely not Li Zixuan deliberately flattering his mother. He was speaking from the bottom of his heart. It was just that in this soup, other than chicken, duck, and goose, he felt that there was another type of meat, but he couldn't taste it. Wow! Is it really that good? Then Lan wants to drink it too. As soon as Li Zixuan finished speaking, the snack vendor Lan was the first to stand up impatiently to scoop the soup. Li Jingma's hand that was holding the chopsticks trembled violently. Then, he quickly snatched the spoon from Lan hand and said, "Lan, you can't drink this soup." "Why?" Lan looked at her father in confusion. In her impression, her father wasn't so stingy with her. "Ahem, this soup is specially made by your mother to nourish your brother's body. Your brother has been running around for the past few days to get married and is exhausted. Lan don't fight with your brother for it." Perhaps realizing that his tone was a little inappropriate, Li Jingma put on a smiling face and patiently explained to his daughter, "Father, there's still so much soup. I can't finish it alone. Let's all have a bowl each." Li Zixuan looked at the nameless soup that was more than a caddy in front of him, and was speechless. "No, Xian this is the soup that your mother boiled for the entire afternoon. Hurry up and finish it. Don't let down your mother's painstaking efforts. If Lan and Yushi want to drink it, your mother can make it tomorrow. Moreover, tomorrow's soup will definitely be better than this." Li Jingma quickly retorted, "Yes. Xian hurry up and drink it. Today's soup is just for me to try my hand. I'll make more tomorrow. Everyone will have a share. You can drink today's soup first." Madame Li also hurriedly said, "Mother is right. Husband, you've worked hard these past few days. Hurry up and drink this soup. I can drink it tomorrow." Han Yushi also turned around and advised after hearing her parents-in-law's words, "Oh, then hurry up and drink it, brother. Lan won't fight with you." Lan glanced at him and generously waved her small hand and said, "All right. Thank you, mother." Li Zixuan's face was full of black lines. If he finished such a big bowl of soup, then what was he going to eat later? However, with 4 pairs of eyes staring at him, he had to drink it even if he didn't want to. Thus, Li Zixuan didn't eat anything for dinner because he was full. Madame Li nodded her head in relief when she saw this. Most of the soup's recipe that she just mentioned was true. It was just that she added a few pieces of sheep's penis to the meat and a few more aphrodisiacs to the medicine. She couldn't be blamed for this. In the afternoon, she heard from the servants that her son and daughter-in-law only left the room at 5 in the afternoon. She was worried that her son would overindulge and his body wouldn't be able to take it. Therefore, the Li family had such a new dish for tonight's banquet. It had to be said that Madame Li was worried sick for her son. However, Li Zixuan was wrongly accused. In the afternoon, other than hugging and kissing in the room, he and Han Yushi didn't run amok like his mother thought. In this way, the innocent Han Yushi would have to suffer again tonight. Chapter 405. It's really blue. When he woke up, the person beside him had already disappeared. After asking Xiao Shi, he found out that his wife had already woken up and was now learning how to do accounts from his mother in the east courtyard. Although Li Zixuan was in charge of the Li family now, his mother would still calculate the accounts of some of the shops every once in a while. She was worried that her son would be fooled by the shopkeeper. After all, it wasn't as if the evil servant had never bullied the master before. Li Zixuan persuaded his mother a few times that she didn't have to work so hard. Now that he had a noble title, which evil servant would dare to bully him? However, his mother didn't listen to him and insisted on her own views. Li Zixuan could only give up trying to persuade her. Now, the Li family welcomed a new mistress. Mrs. Li wanted to hand over the accounts of the shops in her hands, and even the management of the Li family's internal affairs to Han Yushi. As for herself, she would live a leisurely life and quietly wait to hold her grandson. However, Han Yushi had just married into the family. It was obviously unrealistic for her to take over so many things at once. Therefore, Madame Li started a training class for her daughter-in-law from today onwards. Han Yushi was also very willing to learn. On one hand, she could use this opportunity to integrate into the Li family and become the mistress of the family as soon as possible. On the other hand, although Li Zixuan didn't care about her family background and loved her unconditionally, she didn't want to be a useless person. She wanted to share Li Zixuan's burdens. However, her student had dark circles under her eyes today. After Madame Li saw it, she was secretly pleased. It seemed that the tonic soup she made for her son last night was effective. Han Yushi, on the other hand, was complaining in her heart that Li Zixuan had tormented her again last night. He was as energetic as an animal, but she did not know that the real culprit was actually the mother-in-law who was teaching her by her side. Li Zixuan stood in front of the courtyard and twisted his waist a few times. He looked up happily and exclaimed that the sky of Tang Empire was really blue. Last night, when he felt the heat in his lower abdomen, coupled with the strange reaction of the two elders at the dining table, he understood that the soup that his mother made for him had added ingredients. The effect should be similar to the legendary all-nourishing soup. Li Zixuan, who had figured out the crux of the matter, really did not know whether to laugh or cry last night. Han Yushi's injury had not recovered, and he could not torment her there. Therefore, Li Zixuan, whose heart was burning, could only let his wife use other places to think of a way. Since he had a good night's sleep, he naturally felt refreshed when he woke up in the morning. However, did he go overboard last night? Li Zixuan scratched his head embarrassedly when he remembered his wife's bitter face last night. "Young master, I'll get the kitchen to heat up your meal." After Xiao Shi poured away Li Zixuan's face wash water, she came over and said considerately, "Oh, there's no need to heat it up. It's better to eat cold food on a hot day." Li Zixuan waved his hand and went to eat breakfast. Since his wife was busy with serious matters, then shouldn't he also do some serious matters today? The architectural design for Yanhuang College had not even been finalized, and there were still a lot of things to arrange. He had been indulging in the life of a married couple for the past 2 days, and he had become a little dispirited. However, he could not continue to be dispirited like this. Previously, he had resigned from the Imperial College in order to do something big. Of course, he also had the intention of using Yanhuang College to strengthen himself so that others would not dare to bully him casually in the future. Last time, it was the 8 professors who stirred up trouble. He might have been able to handle it, but what if the 8 assistant ministers stirred up trouble together next time? At the end of the day, his foundation was still too shallow. His current nobility was only obtained by relying on a few important inventions to Tang Dynasty. Compared to those nobles who obtained their nobility through military achievements, his current position was obviously not very stable. The reason why he was still living a comfortable life was completely because of Qin Qiong, Cheng Yaojin, and the other nobles who came from the family of generals. However, in life, How could one rely on others to lift them up? One had to be strong to forge iron. Yanhuang College was an important breakthrough for him to gain a foothold in Tang Dynasty. As a transmigrator, if one were to talk about what advantages he had compared to the ancient people, being an official in politics and mingling in the imperial court was definitely not a match for old foxes like Zhang Sun Wuji. However, it was not impossible for him to lead an army and kill the enemy. In any case, he was now a martial arts expert who was half a step into Zongshe realm and was no longer a weak scholar. However, there were currently no important battles that required him to participate in personally. The battle that destroyed the Eastern Turkic Khaganate 3 years ago was still far away. Thus, his most outstanding advantage should be his knowledge that was ahead of the times. In his previous life, even though he did not dare to say that he was a top student, he still had a solid grasp of engineering knowledge. In his profession, he had dabbled in optics, mechanics, electricity, and mathematics. Even if he had forgotten some of it, he could use his perverse mental strength to recall it. With such a good prerequisite, of course, he would not waste it. Thus, he wanted to establish Yanhuang College. He wanted to establish his own sect and become the founder of engineering in Tang Dynasty, a grandmaster of his generation. He wanted to nurture a large batch of outstanding engineering students and turn them into his comrades. Together, they would use engineering to change the entire Tang Dynasty. At that time, with Yanhuang College as his foundation and a large batch of engineering students as his backing, who would be so blind as to find trouble with him? His family and future children would also have a solid guarantee. Just as Li Zixuan was complacently preparing to start the construction of Yanhuang College, Sanbao reported that Chonghua Workshops Chao Wendong had requested to meet him. As for Chao Wendong, Li Zixuan had heard from Sun Huiyuan and Ma Zhou that this person's repeated actions were deliberately to curry favor with him. Li Zixuan had never believed that there was love without a reason in this world, so he was sure that this Chao Wendong must have some ulterior motive. However, he had been busy with marriage and being lovey-dovey with his wife recently, so he had temporarily put this person at the back of his mind. He did not expect that Chao Wendong would come just as he had time. This person was really in a hurry. "Bring him in," Li Zixuan ordered softly. Regardless of whether Chao Wendong had other requests or not, since he had taken the initiative to express his goodwill, he had to meet him. As for whether he would agree to the other party's request, he could only wait and see when the time came. "Yes, young master." A moment later, a slightly plump, middle-aged man in purple followed Sanbao into the hall. "Young master, Boss Chao is here." Sanbao cupped her hands and said, Li Zixuan nodded and gestured for Sanbao to leave. Then, he carefully sized up the person in front of him. Other than his slightly large belly, Chao Wendong's appearance was considered average. At the very least, he was not very annoying. "Greetings, Lord Zhu. I hope Lord Zhu can forgive my rudeness for coming uninvited." Li Zixuan could size up Chao Wendong, but Chao Wendong did not dare to look at Li Zixuan so unscrupulously. Once he entered the room, he kept his head down and looked at his feet obediently. He shuffled to Li Zixuan in small steps and bowed respectfully. Chapter 406. Haha. Boss Chao, you don't have to be so courteous. Li Zixuan helped him up and smiled politely. Then he said, "Boss Chao, you threw 2,000 strings of cash to support the new carriage of the Strange Taste Pavilion. The day before yesterday, you threw 1,000 strings of cash to send over 100 pots of Luoyang red at my wedding banquet. I have yet to thank Boss Chao for his righteous actions. How can I blame you for anything?" Chao Wendong was relieved when he heard that. The money he spent earlier wasn't wasted. With a good start to the conversation, it would be much easier to negotiate the rest. "Lord Zhu, please don't flatter me. It's only a few thousand strings of coins. To Lord Ju, it's probably just a drop in the ocean. Moreover, I really like the new carriage from Strange Interest Pavilion. That's why I didn't hesitate to raise the price to buy it. Thus, I really don't deserve Lord Ju's thanks. Chao Wendong cupped his hands and spoke politely to Li Zixuan. Scholars, farmers, businessmen all had a strict hierarchy. He had no choice but to be polite. Earlier at Strange Taste Pavilion, he did intend to help Li Zixuan with his new carriage. However, this kind of thing could be done but could not be said. Otherwise, the effect of the gift would be greatly reduced. It might even have the opposite effect. Chao Wendong, who had been at the bottom of society for so many years, was very familiar with the ways of officialdom. As expected, a faint smile appeared on Li Zixuan's face. Previously, he had retreated in order to advance. He had indeed intended to test Chao Wendong. Whether it was the Strange Taste Pavilion raising the price of the new carriage or the extravagant gift of 1,000 strings of peonies at the wedding, it was all voluntary by Chao Wendong. It wasn't Li Zixuan who forced it. If Chao Wendong wanted to repay the kindness because of this, Li Zixuan could only flick his sleeves and send him off. He didn't want to be friends with such a scheming person. Fortunately, Chao Wendong's response satisfied Li Zixuan. He knew when to advance and when to retreat. He was sensible and knew how to adapt to circumstances. He was a hero. Haha. Boss Chao, you really are a broad-minded person. However, no matter what, Boss Chao did put in a lot of effort during my wedding, so I'm very grateful. I just don't know why Boss Chao is here today. After probing a little, Li Zixuan felt that Chao Wendong's character was not bad, so he did not beat around the bush and said directly, "Ugh." Chao Wendong was stunned for a moment. The speed at which Li Zixuan cut to the chase was much faster than the officials he had interacted with in the past. This was somewhat different from the general, reserved and tactful style of conversation in the current officialdom. Lord Ju, to tell you the truth, I'm only here for one thing. I'm hoping that Lord Ju can come forward and form a Chamber of Commerce. The members of the Chamber of Commerce can prioritize cooperation with each other. I've always wanted to cooperate with Lord Ju regarding the scooter, Drunken Immortal, Gentle Softness, De Tang Daily, and all the books from Strange Culture. However, I have no way to do so and can only wait at home. Since Li Zixuan did not beat around the bush, Chao Wendong decided not to dawdle and went straight to the point. Li Zixuan raised his eyebrows in surprise. He could understand why Chao Wendong wanted to cooperate with him. After all, the businesses under him were all monopolies. Many people wanted to come in and take a share of the profits, but not everyone was qualified to enter. What surprised him was that Chao Wendong actually wanted him to form a Chamber of Commerce. Was this guy trying to cause trouble? Boss Chao, why do you want to form a Chamber of Commerce? Chao Wendong struggled for a moment, then cupped his hands and said, I've had several business dealings with your father, Master Li, but I didn't expect that the Li family would have such a young hero like Lord Ju. In just a few months, he became the founding father of the Tang Dynasty and took up an important position in the Imperial College. He broke the iron law that has always been in our dynasty that merchants and their children can't enter the imperial court as officials. I and the other merchants all admire you and think that Lord Ju is the hope of us merchants. Therefore, I'd like to be bold and ask Lord Ju to lead us merchants to do something big to eliminate the prejudice of the imperial court and the people of the world against merchants. After Chao Wendong finished speaking, he cupped his hands and bowed deeply to Li Zixuan. He kept his upper body bent at a 90-degree angle and didn't get up. Li Zixuan was speechless. Logically speaking, this was the first time he heard that merchants in the Tang Dynasty couldn't be officials. He had heard that the status of merchants in ancient times was low, but he didn't expect it to be low to this extent. They were being ostracized by all the classes in the world. According to historical records, The four classes of scholars, farmers, workers, and merchants were divided according to the spring and autumn period by the Prime Minister of the state of Qi, Guanzhong. He advocated that the people be divided into four classes: scholars, farmers, workers, and merchants. They would live in fixed areas according to their respective professions. This was called the four classes of occupations. This kind of specialized commodity economy model was respected as the basic form and guiding principle since the Han Dynasty. On the surface, the four classes of occupations seemed to be an inheritance of the ancient system of the Zhou Dynasty. In fact, there was a big difference. The fundamental difference was that the industrial and commercial and farmers were placed side by side, and they were all regarded as the stone people of the country. Therefore, when Guanzhong first divided the classes of scholars, farmers, workers, and merchants, there was no distinction between superior and inferior. The ancient people of China didn't seem to take commerce lightly. The people of Shang clan who established the Shang dynasty after the Xia dynasty were actually the earliest merchants. This is also the root of why we call them merchants. During the Yinshang dynasty, people were happy and good at doing business and engaged in handicraft manufacturing. Later, when the founders of the Zhou dynasty reflected on the lesson of the fall of the Shang dynasty, they believed that the fall of the Yinshang dynasty was due to the people's enthusiasm for industry and commerce. This caused the people's impetuousness and the country's foundation to be unstable. Therefore, they turned to the agricultural policy of despising industry and commerce. In the Zhou dynasty, the status of industry and commerce became very low. Workers were often placed side by side with the status of slaves, male and female slaves. In the later dynasties, as the rulers continued to suppress merchants, the status of merchants became lower and lower. During the Qin dynasty, even if merchants were rich, they couldn't wear silk clothes. During the Han dynasty, merchants couldn't be officials, and handicraftsmen were untouchables. Their property had to be declared to the imperial court. If the declaration wasn't true, their property would be confiscated. During the Tang dynasty, merchants couldn't enter the imperial court as officials. It wasn't until the Ming and Qing dynasties that the status of merchants changed. From rich merchants without an official career path to rich merchants with an official career path, China's merchants had successfully turned the tables. Therefore, for Li Zixuan to be able to obtain an official position as the son of a merchant, it could be considered an unprecedented stroke of luck. The main reason was that he had made enough contributions. Moreover, Qin Xiong and Qing Yaojin had always treated him as a junior and had constantly promoted that reward. In addition, he was the last disciple of the present-age expert, spiritual master. This identity had almost completely washed away his identity as a merchant and added a lot of points to Li Er's impression. Therefore, he was able to obtain his current status as a baron. It could be said that his success couldn't be replicated by the thousands of merchants in the Tang dynasty. Even if Chao Wendong was envious, he couldn't do anything. Chapter 407. Boss Chao, I'm afraid you've misunderstood. My Li family is no longer a merchant's family. There are a few shops in my family that are managed by the servants. This duke and my family are not directly involved. As for what Boss Chao said about improving the status of merchants and changing the impression of merchants in everyone's eyes, this duke can't take on such an important and sacred task. Boss Chao, you'd better find someone else. In the Li residence's hall, Li Zixuan lowered his head and pondered for a long time before shaking his head and refusing. This Chao Wendong only paid a few thousand strings of coins and wanted him, Li Zixuan, to lead this group of merchants in a revolution. It was really a bit whimsical. To be honest, Li Zixuan sympathized with the unfair treatment of the merchants, but it was only sympathy. He wasn't willing to be the leader of the merchants and cause trouble. First, it wasn't worth it. If he wanted to break the 1,000-year-old class system of scholars, farmers, workers, and merchants, he would have to pay too much of a price. Moreover, it wouldn't benefit him at all. He was now in the scholar class and could be considered to be the beneficiary of this class system. How could he be hot-blooded enough to stand up for the merchants just because of Chow Wendong's words? He wasn't an impulsive and brainless brat. Second, his current focus wasn't on this. His most important task right now was to do well in his Yanwang college. He wasn't interested in these irrelevant things at all. So, why would he do something that didn't benefit him and wasn't interested in? He couldn't be obedient just because Chow Wendong had helped him a few times before, right? It was impossible. Chow Wendong's arms suddenly trembled when he heard this, and his expression quickly turned gloomy. He smiled bitterly as he cupped his hands towards Li Zixuan and said, "It seems this Chow has been rude. I hope Lord Zhu can forgive me. This Chow will take his leave now." Wait. Li Zixuan stretched out his hand. Although this noble cannot personally establish a chamber of commerce, this matter of cooperation is still possible. Boss Chow, if you have any feasible plans for cooperation, feel free to go to the workshop and discuss them with Faubert and Ma Zhou. In addition, this noble has no prejudice against merchants. On the contrary, this noble believes that if the great Tang wants to progress and the people of the realm want to live a happier life, they cannot do without merchants. I think Mr. Chow is a man with his own ideas. Although I can't personally participate in the Chamber of Commerce you mentioned, I'm still very willing to give you some support within my ability. These words came from the bottom of Li Zixuan's heart. Historically, Chinese people had the most rigid view of merchants in the world. The low status of merchants was the result of thousands of years of stigmatization. Why did they stigmatize businessmen? Perhaps many people would think of the emphasizing agriculture and suppressing commerce policy of the past dynasties, but first of all, they had to understand that suppressing commerce referred to the merchants of the people, not the official merchants. Under the high-sounding excuses, they actually had the heart to monopolize the market. Therefore, emphasizing agriculture and suppressing commerce was an extremely hypocritical proposition. Just like the modern, purifying the internet environment and establishing a new style of civilization, it was a propaganda slogan of the people in power who were awe-inspiring righteousness while the people involved were cursing. If, 1,000 years later, there was a joker who interpreted it literally and believed that the net cleansing campaign protected the physical and mental health of the people, one would probably laugh their heads off. Unfortunately, history was not written by merchants. In order to maintain their market advantage and prevent the disclosure of trade secrets, merchants were unwilling to write books and spread their ideas and experiences. This gave the people in power a propaganda advantage. They could stand on the moral high ground and wantonly distort the role of merchants to gain an advantage in public opinion by tarnishing the reputation of the other party. As a result, for many years, most people actually believed it to be true. But in fact, the role of merchants in promoting social progress was unquestionable. The greatness of merchants could not be overemphasized. The so-called merchants do not create value was the biggest prejudice. Merchants created value, but labor did not. Merchants were the first driving force of social progress. Merchants brought vitality to society and promoted freedom, fairness, and democracy. Merchants invented and maintained the business system and logistics network, promoting the exchange and spread of ideas, people, and culture. For example, in the late Xia dynasty, it was West Asian merchants who introduced wheat, bronze, and mathematics to China. The glorious achievements of human civilization, such as science, technology, law, and art, were all byproducts of the business system. History was political and incomplete. Only by looking at history from the business perspective could history be restored to its original form. Therefore, from the perspective of social progress, Li Zixuan was very willing to see the status of merchants rise a little and the business of Tang become more prosperous. But if he was asked to be the vanguard of a revolution, then forget it. You could say that he was cold-blooded and heartless, but he had people he needed to protect. He would not take risks for something that was not related to him. That's great. In that case, I thank Lord Zhu for your help and guidance. Chao Wendong expressed his gratitude excitedly. Although this result was still a little far from his ideal, it was still better than nothing. At least he had something to look forward to. Take care, Boss Chao. Father, husband, try this fried chicken meatball and see how it tastes? Noon. The family gathered around the table and ate their lunch warmly. However, the dishes on the table today were obviously different from before. Li Zixuan could smell it with one sniff. It was definitely not made by the kitchen maid at home, Auntie Zhao, nor did it seem like it was made by his mother. That's right. Old Master, Xian Er, today's lunch was all prepared by Yushi alone. She put in a lot of effort. Mrs. Li narrowed her eyes and looked at her daughter-in-law with a smile. Don't we have a kitchen maid at home? Yushi, why did you cook the dishes yourself? Old Master Li frowned and asked. He thought that the servants did not do a good job. Father, I just wanted to do my best. It has nothing to do with Auntie Zhao. Father, quickly try it. Is it delicious? Husband, you should try it as well. There are several dishes here that this concubine made based on the chicken, braised pork, and meatballs that you ate before. Husband, see if they are to your liking. Han Yushi smiled sweetly as she picked up some food for Li Zixuan and said. Li Zixuan looked at the golden and tender chicken meatballs that were the size of pigeon eggs and had 2 or 3 green onions on the outside. He was a little surprised. Wasn't this similar to the salted crispy chicken that was eaten in the modern world? And it was a high-quality version of salted crispy chicken. If Han Yushi had not said that she imitated the dishes that he had invented previously, Li Zixuan would definitely have thought that his wife had also transmigrated. Damn it, his wife's learning ability was heaven-defying. She could even comprehend by analogy based on existing dishes. She was really a genius. Just looking at the appearance of these dishes is very appetizing. Let me try it. Li Zixuan smiled, then picked up a piece of meat and put it into his mouth. Instantly, his mouth was filled with fragrance. He gave a thumbs up and said, delicious. It's really too delicious. Wife, it's lucky that I married you. Otherwise, our family's drunken immortal restaurant would definitely be losing money now. Chapter 408. Lan Er wants to eat too. Lan Er wants to eat too. Also, why did brother say that if we don't marry sister-in-law, our drunken immortal restaurant will suffer a loss? Lan Er stood up and asked curiously as she picked up some salted crispy chicken for herself. Han Yushi also wanted to ask, but when she heard Lan Er ask on her behalf, she sat quietly at the side and looked at her husband's handsome face, waiting for an answer. What's there to be confused about? Li Zixuan chewed on the delicious food in his mouth as he explained, our drunken immortal restaurant's sudden rise is all because of those new dishes I came up with. If your sister-in-law opens a restaurant of her own, every time we come up with a new dish, she only needs to taste it to figure out how to make it. Moreover, she can also make other similar dishes by analogy. In terms of taste, it can even reach a higher level. In this way, what advantage does our drunken immortal restaurant have? We can only suffer a loss. Xian Er is right. This marriage has become a blessing for the drunken immortal restaurant. Old Man Li said half-jokingly, causing everyone to laugh. Thinking about it, Xian Er, you have a good eye for choosing a wife. Madame Li covered her mouth and laughed. Husband, father, mother, you must be joking. How can Yushi's insignificant culinary skills be considered elegant? Not to mention opening a restaurant. I'm already very satisfied to be able to cook some food for husband and mother. Han Yushi heard everyone's praise. Although she was delighted, she still spoke modestly. Sister-in-law is really modest. Lan thinks that this dish is much better than the chicken that brother made. The snack seller, Lan had eaten this salted crispy chicken for the first time, and she immediately changed sides and betrayed. From then on, she became Han Yushi's loyal, hardcore fan. Imperial College. A major event had happened today. The Imperial College's doctor, Cui Shanyu, had recovered from his illness and returned. However, other than the 7 doctors who had joined him in impeaching Li Zixuan, the others didn't seem to like him very much. Even the students of the Imperial College looked at him strangely. There was doubt, disdain in their eyes. Yes, disdain. Ever since Li Zixuan stopped coming to the Imperial College recently, most of the other students of the mathematics school also stopped coming to school. Without the weird and happy team from the mathematics school, the Imperial College immediately lost a lot of its vitality. Later on, news of Li Zixuan's resignation from the Imperial College spread. Many people were shocked and went to verify the authenticity of the news. To be honest, they had a very good impression of this young and talented person who had brought about a major change in the Imperial College's teaching methods and teaching system. Previously, Li Zixuan had created the Red List and Black List. The students of the other schools had been talking about it for a long time. Most of the students who could enter the Imperial College had a strong family background. In less than half a day, the news of Li Zixuan's resignation from the Imperial College was verified. Not only that, even the details of his resignation were dug up by some students. Suddenly, many students were outraged. The 7 professors, Zhu Qinglu, Sima Minglang, Gu Fengyan, Shangguan Yufeng, Lu Yanyu, Zheng Zhanli, and Xikong Linghao, had been attacked by many unknown pebbles in the Imperial College over the past few days. Now, the culprit, Cui Shanyu, had returned. As students of the Imperial College, they naturally felt very ashamed. Some of the more daring second generations even looked at Cui Shanyu with a hint of eagerness. In this strange atmosphere, Cui Shanyu finally finished his morning class. The moment he stepped out, he saw the 7 fellow sufferers waiting for him. "Brother Cui, did you just finish your class?" Zheng Zhanli smiled. What are you all doing here?" Cui Shanyu looked at the 7 people who were lined up neatly in front of him and was puzzled. Cough, cough. "Brother Cui, you don't know. The security in the Imperial College is not very good recently. It's not safe to go out alone." Lu Yanyu smiled bitterly as he walked. There was still a walnut-sized bump on the back of his head. "Oh? Why is that? I've only left the Imperial College for less than half a month. Why would such a strange thing happen?" Cui Shanyu stroked his beard and wondered. "Ha. Let's not talk about these small matters for now. Now that Brother Cui has returned, the position of Secretary of the Imperial College should be in the bag, right?" Zheng Zhanli chuckled. Lu Yanyu heard this and looked at Cui Shanyu enviously. "Ha. What Brother Zheng said is right. That's right, didn't Brother Cui bring our joint recommendation to the Chancellor's place in the morning? How was it? What did the Chancellor say?" The others also looked at Cui Shanyu curiously. Ha. What do you mean by in the bag? It's still too early to talk about this. Before the morning court assembly this morning, I sent your joint recommendations to the Chancellor. The Chancellor didn't say anything at that time. He only asked me to wait patiently for His Majesty's decision. So, don't say anything like in the bag now. Don't make a fool of yourself if I don't become the Secretary of the Imperial College. Cui Shanyu smiled reservedly. But from the expression on his face, he probably felt that he was in the bag too. Ha. Brother Cui, don't be modest. Other than Li Zixuan, all the previous secretaries only needed the joint recommendations of 6 professors. I don't think His Majesty would have any different opinions. Brother Cui, this is what everyone wants. Zheng Zhanli laughed loudly. Gu Fengyan nodded and said, indeed. I think Chancellor Kong will definitely return to the Imperial College in the afternoon. When that time comes, Brother Chui will definitely become the secretary of the Imperial College. We can also bask in the glory. Yes, yes. Brother Chui, don't forget about us when that time comes. The rest of the people also went up and smiled as they complimented him. The flattery in their tone was obvious. Chui Shanyu pretended to be heroic as he waved his hand and smiled. What are you all saying? Even if I, Chui Shanyu, forget someone, I won't forget you all. This sentence finally exposed the true thoughts in Chui Shanyu's heart. From what he said, he was already certain that he would be able to gain Li Er's favor and become the secretary of the Imperial College. The few of them chatted and laughed as they walked towards the Imperial College's canteen. In the afternoon, after lunch, Chui Shanyu came to Kong Ingda's office. He had forgotten that Kong Ingda had the habit of taking afternoon naps. However, Kong Ingda didn't take an afternoon nap today. This could be considered as Chui Shanyu's good luck. Otherwise, if he interrupted Kong Ingda's rest, he would definitely be in trouble in the future. Professor Chui, I think you're here to ask about the results of the appointment? After opening the door and letting Chui Shanyu in, Kong Ingda asked straightforwardly. Cough cough. That is indeed the case. I've made a fool of myself in front of Chancellor. Chui Shanyu felt a trace of awkwardness as he said awkwardly. Here, this is the result of His Majesty's imperial decree this morning. Professor Chui, you can take it out and take a look yourself. This old man needs to rest. Kong Ingda directly took out a piece of bright yellow square silk cloth and handed it over as he said. Oh, then Chancellor, please rest. This Chui will take his leave. Chui Shanyu received the silk cloth with unusual agitation and cupped his hands to bid farewell. When he reached the door, he impatiently opened the silk cloth and saw the words written on it. Not allowed. How can a person who only knows how to fight for power and profit and scheme against others take up this heavy responsibility? The position of Secretary of the Imperial College will continue to be vacant and await a worthy talent. Chapter 409. There was no such thing as an impenetrable wall in the world. The news that the 7 academicians had recommended Chui Shanyu for the position of Minister of the Imperial College but had been mercilessly rejected by Li Er had spread like wildfire in less than an afternoon. There were those who were shocked, those who were lamenting, and even more who were clapping and cheering. Ha ha! That old bastard Chui Shanyu is really shameless. He wants to be the secretary of the Imperial College as soon as he comes back. He really overestimates himself. In the Imperial College, a flat-faced boy squinted his eyes and laughed loudly. It was the end of class, and the previous class wasn't Chui Shanyu's class, so this guy had no scruples and started to act recklessly. He even called Chui Shanyu by his name and called him an old bastard. Ha ha! Su Yuanjin, you're so bold now? If Professor Chui was here, would you still dare to say that? Bah! What's there to be afraid of? Even if that old bastard Chui Shanyu heard it, what can he do to me? He can complain about Li Sai behind his back, but I can't scold him behind his back? I heard that a lot of children pooped in front of Chui Shanyu's house a while ago. They pooped really well. Sai, if I had known, I would have pooped too. What a pity! Su Yuanjin shook his head and said with a regretful expression. Kai Yuenging, who had just finished his class, couldn't help but wipe the cold sweat off his forehead when he heard Su Yuanjin's word. He secretly rejoiced in his heart. Fortunately, he didn't agree to Chui Shanyu's suggestion to impeach Li Zixuan. Otherwise, wouldn't he have become a street rat that everyone wanted to beat up? That's right, Kai Yuenging was also one of the 5 professors of the Imperial College. He was older than Chui Shanyu, but he kept a low profile and didn't show off like Chui Shanyu. He didn't think that Li Zixuan's actions in the Imperial College was a big deal, and it even improved the learning atmosphere and learning efficiency of the Imperial College. So when Chui Shanyu came to him, he rejected him. He wasn't afraid of a crooked shadow anyway, and Cui Shanyu couldn't take revenge on him. Haha. Su Yuanjin, do you really want to poop in front of Professor Cui's house? Of course. It's not like you don't know how interesting Li Sai's lectures are and how many novel ideas he has. He's such a good teacher, but he was forced to leave by that old bastard Cui Shanyu. Fortunately, His Majesty's divine eyes are like torches and saw through this fellow's true colors. Otherwise, if this old thing really became the Minister of War, then wouldn't our days in the future become as boring as before? That's right, if Professor Cui becomes Li Sai, he might really wipe out the new system that Li Sai brought. Hey, what do you mean maybe? That would definitely be the case. Actually, I've long wanted to transfer to the School of Mathematics, but my stubborn old man didn't agree. Fine, even if he agrees now, I won't go to the School of Mathematics. Without Li Sai, what's the point of going to the School of Mathematics? Su Yuanshao shook his head and curled his lips in regret. This fellow was also a weirdo. He actually dared to talk about his own father in public. There was no one else like him. Haha. Actually, Yuan Shao, it's not like you don't have a chance. I heard that Li Sai is going to build his own college called Yanhuang College. His Majesty even wants to personally carry a plaque for it. Build his own college? No, what future does the college have? My old man definitely won't let me go. He won't even let me go to the School of Mathematics. If I tell him that I want to go to a private college, my old man will beat me to death. You can't say that. I heard that more than half of the 44 students in the School of Mathematics are going to follow Li Sai to Yanhuang College. His Royal Highness Prince Wei is also among them. Yuan Shao, do you dare to say that the college has no future? Now that you mention it, I really want to go. But my old man doesn't buy it. I already told him that even Prince Wei is going to the School of Mathematics, but he just didn't agree. Don't you think that he's a stubborn old man? Haha. If Uncle Su hears you talk about him like that, he will beat you to death. Yanfu, what do you say? Didn't you say that you want to transfer to the School of Mathematics? Are you still going to transfer? In the classroom of the Imperial Academy, Yuan Shua, who was sitting in the middle row on the right, turned his head and asked Chu Yanfu after hearing the students in front of him talking loudly. Sigh. My father agreed 2 days ago, but who would have thought that something like this would happen? Now that Li Sai is gone, the School of Mathematics will definitely not be the lively School of Mathematics that it used to be. Why should I go there? Chu Yanfu shook his head and smiled bitterly. Of course, Chu Suiyang was not a pedantic person. Previously, when Chu Yanfu had brought up the idea of transferring schools, he had seriously considered it for 2 days and felt that going to the School of Mathematics was not a bad idea. He himself had some understanding of Li Zixuan's character. Most importantly, Li Chengqian held Li Zixuan in high esteem. As a member of the Crown Prince faction, what was there to hesitate about? It was just that, he was really unlucky. He had just agreed, and Li Zixuan had already jumped ship to build his own school. The tragic Chu Yanfu would probably have to go home and apply for another transfer to his father, and Chu Suiyang would probably have to face another choice. Then, Yanfu, are you interested in the Yanhuang College that Li Sai wants to build? Do you want to go? Yuan Shua looked at the regretful expression on his good friend's face and suddenly thought of a crooked idea, so he suggested. Go. I missed the opportunity once, and I can't miss it again. Yuan Shua, you don't know how much more motivated the students have become after Li Sai came to the School of Mathematics. Moreover, Li Sai's teaching method is also full of tricks. It's completely different from the professors in our Imperial Academy, who only know how to read books all day long. Chu Yanfu thought for a moment and suddenly said firmly, Yanfu, you can't be serious, right? Don't you know the morals of the schools in our Tang Dynasty? If you go there, what will your future be like? Moreover, your father will definitely not agree. Yuan Shuo was really shocked. He had only said it casually and never expected Chu Yanfu to actually dare to do this. He was really too daring. Of course, I'm serious. I don't care about the other schools, but I believe that Li Sai's school will definitely be different from theirs. You saw Li Sai's wedding 2 days ago, right? That scene, that spirit, that creativity. I don't believe that someone who can arrange such a grand wedding will build a small school. Perhaps when Li Sai's school is completed, it will be even bigger than the Imperial Academy. As for my father, I will definitely convince him, Chu Yanfu said confidently. As he spoke, his eyes became brighter and brighter. It was a kind of expectation and yearning for a bright and beautiful future. Speaking of which, this child could be considered as the first student attracted by Yanhuang College other than the students of the School of Mathematics. Chapter 410. Yanfu, you're actually so confident in Yanhuang College? 2 days ago, Li Sai's wedding was the talk of the town. Of course I saw it. It was indeed the grandest wedding in the history of the Tang Empire. However, building a college is not the same as holding a wedding, right? Yuan Shuo was stunned speechless. He really admired his good friend's way of thinking. Haha, although it's not the same, I can completely see Li Sai's huge and grand vision of the situation from this grand wedding. That's enough. Chu Yanfu smiled and said confidently. Yuan Shuo shook his head. He saw that Chu Yanfu had already made up his mind that he couldn't persuade him, so he simply stopped trying. In fact, he also had a glimmer of hope for Yanhuang College. Perhaps in a few years, Yanhuang College could also soar into the sky and become an existence that could stand shoulder to shoulder with the Imperial College. Perhaps this could also be considered Li Zishuan's personal charm? There were always some people who had an inexplicable trust in him. Your Majesty, today's morning court, why did you, Empress Zhongsun, was in Li Er's arms and suddenly asked in the Empress's bedroom in Li Jing Palace? That's right, the couple had taken an afternoon nap together after lunch. Of course, only God knew if anything embarrassing had happened in between. Guanyin Maid wants to ask why I didn't agree with those people recommending Cui Shanyu as the new minister of the Imperial College, right? Li Er said with a smile as he held Empress Zhongxuan's back that was as smooth as jade and silk. Yes, but I'm just asking casually. After all, according to the previous practice, Cui Shanyu should be able to win the joint recommendation of so many doctors. Empress Zhongsun explained without leaving a trace. She had always strictly adhered to the bottom line of the harem, not being allowed to interfere in politics. Perhaps this was one of the reasons why Li Er's love for her never waned. She was sensible, knew when to advance and retreat, and was virtuous and virtuous. No man would dislike such a woman. Haha. Guanyin Maid doesn't need to explain. You and I have been husband and wife for so many years. How can I not understand you? Li Er was so astute, how could he not understand the meaning behind those words? He patted Empress Zhongxuan's back, and then said with a cold chuckle, Cui Shanyu himself can't compete with Li Zishuan in terms of ability, so he wants to use a joint impeachment to drag down Li Zishuan through my blade. Then, he himself can become a minister of the Imperial College, huh? Dream on. What he doesn't know is that this Emperor's saber is double-edged. If he injures others, he won't have an easy time either. The director of the Imperial College? He's not qualified. Zhongsun patted Li Er's strong chest, wanting to soothe her husband's anger. She smiled and said, Cui Shanyu can be considered unlucky. If the news gets out, I'm afraid he won't have an easy time in the future. But Your Majesty, by doing this, aren't you telling everyone that you're on Li Zishuan's side? Heh. That's right. I want to tell them that I only choose people based on their abilities. I don't need those imperial court parasites who only know how to play tricks and scheme all day long. Li Zishuan, that brat, has been wronged this time. I can't let him be bitterly disappointed, can I? Yes. If that child knows that your Majesty has put in so much effort, he might be overjoyed. Empress Zhongsun covered her mouth and laughed. Hearing this, Li Er snorted and said, "Ha! That brat won't be so conscientious." After a moment he thought and continued, "But I'm really looking forward to what that brat's Yanhuang College will be like. If the wedding can be so grand, the college can't be bad. Maybe he really will give us all a big surprise." Empress Zhongsun was right. The most important thing about Cui Shanyou's failure to be a minister of the Imperial College was not the matter itself, but the deeper meaning behind it. Li Er was obviously supporting Li Zixuan. This made those who heard that Li Zixuan had been kicked out of the Imperial College and thought that Li Zixuan had lost the Emperor's favor and his future was bleak. At the same time, more and more people began to pay attention to the Yanhuang College that Li Zixuan was about to establish. The radicals had already begun to think of ways to send their children to Yanhuang College. After all, if one wanted to establish a college, one must have knowledge and a view of the big picture. Li Zixuan had both, and he had the support of Li Er. Such a potential stock was worth investing in. The conservatives were still waiting for Li Zixuan to establish the college before making a decision. Being in the whirlpool of the storm, Li Zixuan heard that Jing Zhanli, Lu Yenyu, and the others had jointly recommended Cui Shanyu to be a minister of the Imperial College, but had been rejected. He just smiled and thought that Jing Zhanli was not muddle-headed and knew who to use and who not to use. Even if Cui Shanyu was his subordinate, he would not put him in an important position. What he lacked the most, and what he liked the most, was people like Ma Zhou who were both talented and hard-working. Only such people could bring economic benefit. If it had been in the past, Li Zixuan might have written an article in the newspaper to ridicule Cui Shanyu. But now, he would not do that. First, he was now married and could be considered an adult, so he had become more mature. Second, there was an internal investigation department in Tang Daily. If he really did that, Yu Shernan and the others would definitely not agree, and he could not reason with Li Er, because he did not have the right to. Third, he did not have time now. He was busy designing his future foundation, Yanhuang College. As a young engineering student in the 21st century, Li Zixuan certainly had a plan. There were so many institutions of higher learning in the country, and there were all kinds of famous buildings and famous scenic spots. If he just copied a few, it would be enough to shock everyone. The scenic spots were not so bad, but the buildings were generally very large in size. If he only relied on his spiritual power to construct a three-dimensional model in his mind, it would be too torturous. Li Zixuan expressed that he was under a lot of pressure. He now deeply felt the inconvenience caused by his low level of martial art. This was because he only dared to meditate for 2 hours in the afternoon, and he had to rest more than 10 times in the middle. As a result, the efficiency was greatly reduced. Fortunately, although the building was large in size, the structure of the general building was relatively simple. There were many repeated units. In terms of complexity, the internal structure of a building was not as complicated as the internal structure of a car. This was also the reason why Li Zixuan could barely recall the three-dimensional model of a high-rise building with only the spiritual power of the 5th level of the Taishen Sutra. Sigh. I can't meditate anymore or I'll faint again. Let's go see what my wife is cooking for dinner. Li Zixuan rubbed his swollen head, put away the half-finished blueprint, and walked out of the door to the kitchen. Chapter 4:11. Husband, it's time to get up. The next morning, the sky was just beginning to brighten. Han Yushi opened her eyes and felt the weight on her naked body. She knew that it was her lover's arms and legs. She had recovered from her injuries last night. As newlyweds, the two of them couldn't help but be passionate. When she thought of the complete nonsense last night and the passionate entanglement, Han Yushi couldn't help but blush. Her body went soft, and she didn't even want to move a finger. But when she thought that she had to go back with her husband today, she couldn't help but prop herself up and wake Li Zishuan up. Otherwise, it would be too embarrassing if Xiao He and Xiao Shi came over to wake him up. She didn't know that the two little maidservants sleeping in the outer room were still sleeping soundly. Last night, the two of them were tormented by the sounds inside and didn't fall asleep until the latter half of the night. Oh, it's still early. Sleep a little more. Even the Emperor hasn't woken up yet. Li Zishuan narrowed his eyes and looked out of the window. When he realized that the sun hadn't come out yet, he couldn't help but grumble. He hugged his wife's hand tighter and closed his eyes to sleep again. Husband. Seeing Li Zishuan's lazy look, Han Yushi was embarrassed and couldn't help but push his arm. She said anxiously, Husband, we have to go back today. If we don't wake up early, we won't be able to make it. Didn't we agree on it last night? Go back. Then I'll get up. In a daze, Li Zishuan remembered that there was indeed such a thing. He hurriedly propped himself up and got up. Suddenly, he looked at the beauty on the bed and teased, Why does my wife look so energetic? No wonder people say that there are only cows that are plowed but no fields that are plowed. You're courting death. The gentle and virtuous Han Yushi could not stand such hateful words. Hearing this, she immediately came over and pinched the soft flesh on Li Zishuan's waist. Who said she wasn't tired? She was also exhausted last night. If it wasn't for the fact that she had to return home to visit her relatives today, she also wanted to stay in bed and not get up. She didn't expect to be teased by her husband like this. Ouch. Wife, quickly let go. My old waist. Li Zishuan immediately bared his teeth and screamed. After breakfast, the couple took their gifts and matchmaker's song with them and embarked on their journey back to Ning City. Returning to peace was also known as visiting, returning home, or returning to the home of the three dynasties. It originated very early, and there were related records in the Book of Songs. Generally, it referred to newlyweds who brought gifts to visit the bride's family on the third day of their marriage. At this time, the bride's family also had to prepare a banquet, usually at noon, known as the Returning to Peace Banquet or Inviting the Son-in-Law. After the Returning to Peace Banquet was over, the matchmaker's work would come to an end, and the man would have to send gifts to the matchmaker to express his gratitude. Therefore, Matchmaker Song woke up early today and rushed to the Li family because the debt from before hadn't been settled yet. Compared to other newlyweds, Li Zishuan and Han Yushi's Returning to Peace Banquet today was slightly more complicated. Their first stop was the Qin Manor, which was what the two elders had instructed them to do yesterday afternoon. After all, Qin Xiong and Mrs. Qin both treated Han Yushi as their biological daughter and helped a lot in this wedding. They also supported the Li and Han families a lot. If the Qin Manor could be considered half of Han Yushi's family, it wouldn't be too much at all. On the contrary, if they didn't go today, it would really be a bit too much. There was no other reason why they chose to go to the Qin Manor first. The main reason was that the Qin Manor was closer to the Li family. After they were done, they could go to the Han family for the Returning to Peace Banquet. Previously, Li Zishuan had sent someone to the Qin Manor to deliver a letter, so when they arrived at the door, they saw Qin Huayu waiting there. Ha! Brother Huayu. Li Zishuan got off the carriage with his wife and quickly walked over to Qin Huayu. He laughed heartily as he greeted him. He hadn't forgotten how his 4 good brothers had helped him drink on the night of his wedding. Hey, little Xian, you left me and Chumo alone that day. That wasn't very kind of you. Qin Huayu bore a grudge and punched Li Zishuan in the chest as he joked. Ha! That night your little brother couldn't hold his liquor. Didn't I come to visit you today? Li Zishuan shamelessly spouted nonsense. Greetings, sworn brother. Han Yushi stepped forward and bowed to Qin Huayu. Ha! You don't have to be so polite, sworn sister. Go in quickly. My father and mother are waiting for you. Qin Huayu originally wanted to scold Li Zixuan, but since Han Yushi came over to greet him, he couldn't continue scolding him. He could only lead the couple in front of him into the manor. As expected, Qin Xiong and Mrs. Qin were sitting in the living room, waiting for them. Qin Xiong was wearing a thin black shirt, and his face was flushed. Li Zixuan could feel the heat from his body even from far away. He probably just finished his morning exercise. Thinking of this, Li Zixuan couldn't help but feel a little ashamed. Qin Xiong was already so old, but he still hadn't given up on martial arts. He hadn't gotten up early to practice martial arts in a long time. After he had a wife, he couldn't bear to part with his wife in the morning. Yesterday, when he was recalling the three-dimensional model of modern university buildings, he was still complaining that his mental strength wasn't enough. It seemed that he should hurry up and practice martial arts starting tomorrow. Li Zixuan secretly encouraged himself. Greetings, godfather. Greetings, godmother. Han Yushi didn't have such complicated thoughts. She followed Li Zixuan to Qin Xiong and Mrs. Qin and bowed gracefully. Ah. Good girl, get up. Mrs. Qin's face was like a blooming flower. She quickly went forward and pulled Han Yushi to sit beside her. She looked at Han Yushi carefully and couldn't help but laugh when she saw that Han Yushi's face was rosy and full of energy. Yushi, how are you doing in the Li family? Xiao Xian didn't bully you, right? If he really did, tell me. Your godfather and I won't let him off. That's right. The Qin family is your maiden home. Yushi, if you suffer any grievances at Xiao Xian's place, feel free to tell your godfather. Qin Xiong stroked his beard and smiled. Yes, yes, yes. Godsister, if Xiao Xian bullies you, I won't let him off easily either. It was rare to have the opportunity to pretend to be rich in front of Li Zixuan, so Qin Huayu also joined in the fun. Li Zixuan was speechless. It was supposed to be a good grinning event to visit relatives. How did it become a meeting to criticize him? Thank you, godfather and godmother, for your concern. My husband treats me very well and didn't bully me. Han Yushi quickly explained with a smile when she saw Li Zixuan's embarrassed look. Ahem, even though Li Zixuan had just bullied her last night, this kind of private matter obviously couldn't be told to outsiders. Chapter 412. Uncle Qin, are you feeling better? After some small talk, Li Zixuan suddenly asked. Although from another perspective, Qin Xiong was half his father-in-law, Li Zixuan was not used to calling him that, so he insisted on calling him Uncle Qin. Qin Xiong was stunned and said with a smile, much better. Although I'm not as strong as before, I can wield the golden mace for at least an hour now. Haha. This is all thanks to little Xian's medicinal wine and the blood-stealing life-prolonging technique. Otherwise, with this old man's body, I can only struggle at death's door for 2 to 3 years. The children are all here, and you're still spouting nonsense. Mrs. Qin gave Qin Xiong a reproachful look before complaining to Li Zixuan. Your Uncle Qin just got a little better, and he couldn't stand it anymore. A while ago, he felt that he could wield the golden mace, so he tried it. Once he tried, he didn't know how to wield it. In the end, he couldn't catch his breath and fainted. Luckily, the golden mace didn't fall and hit him. Otherwise, he would be a laughing stock. Huh? There's such a thing? Li Zixuan's eyes widened in shock. Qin Xiong's face turned red in embarrassment. He coughed dryly. Ahem. Don't listen to your aunt's nonsense. That day, I just haven't used the golden mace for a long time, and I wasn't used to it yet. Now that I've adapted to it, I'm fine, right? I can wield it for an hour now. Humph. How old are you? Don't you know how heavy it is? Don't you know how heavy your golden mace is? Mrs. Qin did not give her husband any face and mocked him. Ahem. Uncle Qin, can you let your nephew see your golden mace? Li Zixuan suddenly asked curiously. In his previous life, he had often seen Qin Xiong, the door god, holding a pair of golden maces in his hands. He looked majestic and arrogant. Now that he had the chance to get close to this legendary figure, of course he wanted to see for himself what the golden maces looked like. Haha. What's wrong with that? Huayu, take out your father's golden mace. Oh, wait, you don't seem to be able to carry it. Let's carry it for father. Xiao Xian, wait. Seeing that Li Zixuan was interested in his weapon, Qin Xiong was overjoyed. He laughed and went to another room to get the golden mace. Not long after, Qin Xiong came to Li Zixuan with a pair of golden truncheons in his hands. He said, "Here, this is the golden truncheons that have followed this old man to war for more than 10 years. Little Xian, take it." With that, he handed the golden mace to Li Zixuan. Li Zixuan suddenly felt his hands sink. He could not help but raise his eyebrows in surprise. The golden truncheons were only about 2 feet and 2 inches, about 70 to 80 centimeters, long. He estimated that they were at most 20 to 30 caddies. However, after Li Zixuan weighed them, he realized that they were more than 20 to 30 caddies. They must have weighed at least 70 to 30 caddies. In the Sui and Tang dynasties, Qin Xiong's golden truncheons weighed about 20 caddies. However, according to the official history of the Tang dynasties, Qin Xiong's golden truncheons weighed 65 caddies each, for a total of 70 to 30 caddies. Looking at the 2 maces in his hands that were unremarkable in appearance but shockingly heavy, Li Zixuan couldn't help but feel speechless. No one who had just recovered from a serious illness would be stupid enough to take out such heavy weapons for training. This was King playing with one's life. Qin Xiong was really going all out. Luckily, he had only fainted because of a concussion. If he had sprained his back, it would have been troublesome. Haha. Little Xian, how is it? My golden truncheons are not bad, right? They are stained with quite a few enemies' brains. Qin Xiong saw Li Zixuan staring at the truncheons in a daze. He thought that this kid was shocked by the truncheon's domineering aura. He could not help but laugh proudly. Brains? Li Zixuan was so shocked that his wrist trembled. He almost threw the truncheons to the ground. During the rescue mission at Mt. Baimang, although he had killed dozens of people, including Flying Snake, he did not use the truncheons to hit people's heads for fun like Qin Xiong. Too disgusting. Cough cough. Uncle Qin, please forgive me for being blunt. You have just recovered some of your blood qi. It is not suitable for you to use such a heavy weapon. You have to know that going too far is as bad as not going far enough. This is especially true for martial arts. My master said that martial arts is a process to stimulate the human body's potential. However, if you do not care about the limits of your body and forcefully increase the burden, not only will your martial arts not improve, but your body will also break down. Li Zixuan thought for a moment and said solemnly, anyone who was sick would have a gradual recovery process. For someone like Qin Xiong, who felt that his body was slightly better, he went straight to the most difficult training method. He was really seeking death. Li Zixuan could not help but feel lucky that he came today. Otherwise, if he let Qin Xiong continue like this, his body's potential would be overdrawn, and it would be difficult for him to recover in the future. Oh? There's such a thing? Why haven't I heard of it? Qin Xiong asked suspiciously. You haven't heard of it because you are ignorant. Are your medical skills better, or is Xiao Xian's medical skills better? Xiao Xian. According to what you said, does that mean that my master will not be able to use the truncheons in the future? Mrs. Qin was shocked after hearing Li Zixuan's words. She quickly stood up and looked at Li Zixuan. Of course, she could not help but pinch Qin Xiong in the process. Hiss! Qin Xiong grimaced and did not say anything else. Li Zixuan pretended that he did not see their little actions and said seriously, in reply to Auntie, at least before Uncle Qin fully recovers, he should not use such a heavy weapon. That is tantamount to overdrawing his life potential. It won't be too late to use the truncheons after Uncle Qin fully recovers. For now, it's best to use some light weapons to train your body. That will be beneficial to your recovery. Master, did you hear that? I'll let someone take these truncheons away for now. You should change to a lighter weapon in the future. Mrs. Qin turned her head and glared at her husband. Then, without any explanation, she asked the servants to take the truncheons away. Qin Xiong stretched out his hand and said unhappily, "But I'm not used to changing weapons. It's better not to practice." "Then don't practice if you don't want to, just rest," Mrs. Qin insisted stubbornly. "You." Qin Xiong waved his hand in exasperation. Then, he turned to Li Zixuan and said shamelessly, "You brat, you took away my truncheons. You have to think of another way for me. It wasn't easy for me to wield a sword and a spear. If I still do nothing every day, I feel like my bones are going to rust." Li Zixuan was stunned speechless. He did not expect Qin Xiong to have such a mischievous side. Perhaps it was because he really treated him as a nephew that he revealed his true nature. He tilted his head and thought for a moment. Then, he suddenly laughed and said, "I've got it! Uncle Qin, I have a set of very advanced fist techniques here. Not only will it help your body recover, but it will also help Uncle Qin comprehend the martial arts realm." Chapter 413. Fist Technique? No way. What fist technique can defeat this old man's golden mace? You sure know how to brag. Qin Xiong shook his head in disbelief. "Master, Xiao Xian already said that this fist technique can nourish the body. Since you can't use the golden mace now, just follow along and practice. After all, Xiao Xian won't harm you," Madame Qin hurriedly advised. "That's right, father. Go ahead and practice. Xiao Xian isn't someone who likes to boast. Since he said that this fist technique is good, then there must be something special about it." Qin Huayu also stood up and advised. There was no helping it. Qin Xiong was as stubborn as a bull. "All right, then let's take a look first." Qin Xiong saw that if he didn't agree, it seemed like he would be betrayed. He hurriedly waved his hand. Thus, the group of people all moved to the training field in the backyard of Qin Manor. Li Zixuan looked at the time and thought to himself, "I can't delay for too long. I still have to go to the Han Manor for the returning home banquet." Thus, he went straight to the point and said, "Uncle Qin, this fist technique is called Tai Chi. It was deduced by my master from the thousands of Taoist techniques in his spare time. As the saying goes, the great Tao is above Tai Chi, but not high, below the six extremes, but not deep, above heaven and earth, but not old, above the ancient times, but not old. Taiji fist may look ordinary on the surface, but those who have truly grasped its essence can feel its infinite mysteries. If Uncle Qin can grasp its essence and integrate the profoundness of Taiji fist into your Tai Chi technique, I'm sure your martial arts realm will reach a higher level in the future." Qin Xiong's expression became more and more serious as he listened to Li Zixuan's words. He didn't expect Tai Chi to have such a great background. After Li Zixuan finished speaking, he sighed and said, "Since this fist technique was created by your master, and I'm not a Taoist, how can I steal it? Xiao Xian, it's better that you don't teach it to him." "Uncle Qin, you're wrong. My master has never had the thought of keeping his knowledge to himself. His greatest wish in life is for me to pass on all his knowledge to those who need it," Li Zixuan said hurriedly. "Spiritual Master Ling Su is indeed an otherworldly expert. This old man cannot compare to your breadth of mind." Qin Xiong sighed. Li Zixuan smiled and said, "Uncle Qin, I still have to go to the Han Manor later, so I'll teach you a simple set of Taiji fist first. There are a total of 24 forms. If you think this fist technique is okay, then I'll teach you the complete set of Taiji fist." Qin Xiong nodded and solemnly cupped his fists towards Li Zixuan. That was a cupped fist salute to people of the same generation. Tai Chi was not something that Li Zixuan had created by simply activating his Goldfinger. Moreover, his Goldfinger did not have the overbearing ability of copying martial arts from his previous life. In his previous life, he had majored in Tai Chi and Tai Chi swordsmanship. Why didn't he choose basketball? Because he wasn't tall enough. Why not choose football? Because his body was not strong enough. His stamina could not keep up. Therefore, he could only tragically practice Tai Chi with a group of girls and a few boys in every PE class. However, as he practiced, he gradually became interested in Tai Chi. The PE teacher of his class majored in Tai Chi before and had even won a place in a national competition. Li Zixuan's curiosity was aroused and he had the intention of becoming a disciple. This was because he knew that they were practicing a simplified version of Tai Chi in class. The PE teacher was a beautiful woman who was not even 30 years old and had just graduated from the Capital Sports University. Li Zixuan's disciple was definitely only for Tai Chi, not for the person. When she heard that Li Zixuan was interested in Tai Chi, she could not help but be surprised. However, the teacher was also afraid that teaching in private would cause gossip, so she sent Li Zixuan a complete video of Tai Chi and Tai Chi swordsmanship so that he could self-study and ask her if he had any questions. Everyone had a dream of becoming a martial arts master, and Li Zixuan was no exception. At that time, this guy was as excited as if he had received a secret martial arts manual. He practiced in private for about 2 months and had mastered all the basic movements of the 108 forms of Yang's Tai Chi and the 55 forms of Yang's Tai Chi swordsmanship. Taking advantage of the time after class, he demonstrated it to the beautiful teacher. The beautiful teacher pointed out more than a dozen shortcomings. After a few rounds of guidance, he got full marks in Tai Chi in the first semester of his freshman year and Tai Chi swordsmanship in the second semester of his sophomore year, which made others envious. However, after he found out that Tai Chi could not make him a martial arts master, he gradually let go of it and became a nerd who only knew how to run back and forth between the laboratory, the classroom, and the dormitory. At this moment, Li Zixuan nodded at Qin Xiong and then began to close his eyes and clear his heart. After a while, when his essence, qi, and spirit reached the best state, he opened his eyes and drew a circle with the tip of his foot. His hands formed a circle, and his body stretched limitlessly. With one foot as the core, he slowly danced along the agitation of his body's qi. Tai Chi Yin and Yang Xian Li Ming, thousands of changes do not leave the origin. Not biased, not relying on defense, and only when you understand the loosening and tightening skill can you succeed. Li Zixuan recited the formula, and his hands formed a circle and pushed it horizontally. In this life, he already had a very deep foundation in martial arts, and in his meridians, there was the purest Taoist true qi. As soon as he started the Tai Chi movement, he immediately felt a sense of intimacy, as if his blood was thicker than water, and his whole person seemed to have entered a very strange state. If he had to use a word to describe it, it would be that he completely forgot himself, and became one with the world. This feeling was very strange. Tao is the natural law of nature, don't ask for it, don't pursue it. The heart is loose, the spirit is loose, it seems loose, but it is not loose. Li Zixuan had already forgotten where and when he was at this moment. There was a fire in his heart, and that was that he must freely and unrestrainedly perform this set of Tai Chi fist techniques. He slightly turned his body, turned his waist, and crossed his arms. His left and right palms flew up and down, and it was difficult to see with the naked eye. At this moment, an early flower butterfly landed in the center of his palm. A world in a flower, a Bodhi in a leaf. Every blade of grass and tree had life. Every insect and fish had spirituality. Li Zixuan smiled at the flower butterfly, and then let the flower butterfly move up and down in his palm. He stretched out his 2 hands, and shook his arms up and down according to the frequency of the flower butterfly's wings, up and down, borrowing and dispersing force. Every time the flower wanted to fly, it would be coincidentally dispelled by his strength. When the flower's body fell, it would be pushed up into the air by his rebounding force. His strength was light, and his posture was casual. He merged with nature like a beautiful painting of mountains and rivers. At this moment, the morning sun had just passed the pavilions on the east side of the martial arts practice field, and a thin mist surrounded it. The new sun had just risen, and the rays of light shone on Li Zixuan's tall and handsome body. From afar, he seemed to be bathed in divine light. Dressed in white, he was handsome and elegant, like a golden immortal who had been banished to the world. Below the stage, Han Yushi, Qin Qiong, Madame Qin, and Qin Huayu were stunned. How was this a fist technique? This was an immortal's technique, right? The great Tao has no boundaries, and the world and man become one. Little Xian has comprehended the Tao. I'm afraid that breaking through to the master stage is just around the corner. The younger generation will surpass us in time, truly surpassing us in time. Qin Qiong's martial arts realm was not below Li Zixuan's. He quickly saw the wonderful state Li Zixuan was in and couldn't help but sigh. The others were confused, not knowing what Qin Qiong was talking about. Han Yushi only felt that her husband looked really good when he performed the fist technique. She looked and couldn't help but be mesmerized. A faint blush appeared on her cheeks, and she was especially cute, just like some little infatuated girls in modern times. Chapter 4:14. Some people said that Tai Chi originated from the Tang Dynasty during the reign of Emperor Ruizong, Su Xianping. Others said that Tai Chi originated from the Ming Dynasty's Wudong sect leader, Zhang Sanfeng. Others said that Tai Chi was first created by Chen Wanting and Wang Zhongyue in the Qing dynasty. It was called Long Fist, Cotton Circle, 13 Forces, and Soft Hand. During the reign of Qianlong, Wang Zhongyue from Shaanxi wrote Tai Chi Theory, which gave it its name. Li Zixuan didn't know if that was true. After all, he didn't major in history in university. He didn't need to know because from this moment on, there was only one creator of Tai Chi, and that was his godlike master, spiritual master Lingxiu. Tai Chi didn't exist in this era. It would be a waste not to take advantage of this opportunity. He would take it as promoting the essence of the nation. This was the first time Li Zixuan showed Tai Chi to someone in this world. It was also the best Tai Chi he had ever shown in his previous life. Today, he realized that the real Tai Chi was like this. It was powerful. Yes, it was powerful. In his previous life, the 108 forms of Yang-style Tai Chi he learned from videos were just for show. He only learned the movements and didn't understand the essence of Tai Chi therefore. His Tai Chi was weak and powerless. It wasn't much better than the Tai Chi grandpas and grandmas in the park. In this life, combined with this body's deep understanding of Taoism, Li Zixuan's Taiji fist was already at the beginning of the path. He could even feel a hint of Taoism from it. Perhaps in the eyes of ordinary people like Mrs. Qin, Li Zixuan's Tai Chi was still slow and soft. It wasn't suitable for fighting with others. However, in the eyes of a true martial arts expert like Qin Qiong, Li Zixuan's every punch and movement was full of power and beauty. Li Zixuan penetrated his mind into every movement. It was light but not floating, soft but not soft. It was as if he was floating in the water, floating in the Yangtze River. His waist was like a wheel, and his spirit surged as he continuously swam through the water. Every time Li Zixuan threw a punch or an elbow strike, Qin Qiong could feel the intense true qi vibrations around his fist and elbow joints from afar. The most surprising thing was that the frequency of the true qi vibrations was not random, but changed according to Li Zixuan's movements. Everything looked so coordinated and natural, like a fish in water. In fact, this was one of the essence of Tai Chi fist. The Tao of nature, 4 tails against 1,000 caddies. Arm support, knee support, mind support. If you don't support yourself, support yourself, support yourself. Huff. Li Zixuan's body was already emitting a wave of heat as he unleashed the last move of the fist technique. A few drops of sweat also appeared on his forehead. Standing on the martial arts stage, Li Zixuan closed his eyes and remained silent for a long time. He was comprehending the faintly discernible Tao. Han Yushi was just about to go up and wipe her husband's sweat, but Qin Xiong reached out and stopped her. Yushi, don't go first. Xiao Xian should have comprehended the Tao just now. Let him calm down. The benefits are immeasurable. Qin Xiong said solemnly. Ah? Comprehended the Tao? Han Yushi covered her mouth in shock. Seeing Qin Xiong use his hand to signal her to be quiet, she quickly nodded and said, Yes, Godfather. Qin Xiong put his hands behind his back, took a few steps forward, and stood on the edge of the stage. Then, he straightened his back and did not move. He was protecting Li Zixuan and not letting anyone disturb Li Zixuan's comprehension of martial arts. After a full half an hour, Li Zixuan opened his eyes. He looked slightly excited because just now, he felt that his stagnant realm had loosened a little. For the first time, he had close contact with the so-called Master Realm. It seemed that he was not far away from the Master Realm. This was like having a girlfriend. If the girl's hand was held by you, would she still be far away from becoming your real girlfriend? I'm sorry. I wanted to teach Uncle Qin the body-strengthening technique, but I didn't expect to be addicted for a while. Li Zixuan saw Qin Xiong looking at him with a smile not far away. Only then did he remember where he was and what he was here for. He quickly went up and cupped his hands in embarrassment. Ha ha. It's fine, it's fine. Xiao Xian, you're probably going to break through to the Master Realm soon, right? This kind of martial arts talent is really shocking. I've lived all my life, but I've never heard of such a young Master Realm master in the pugilistic world. The younger generation will surpass us in time. My Tang Dynasty is blessed. Qin Xiong patted Li Zixuan's shoulder and laughed with emotion. Ha ha. Uncle Qin, you flatter me. I was just lucky. If I didn't suddenly think of teaching you Taiji fist today, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to enter that state for a long time. Ha. You're just lazy. I've never heard of you waking up early to practice martial arts, but I didn't expect your martial arts to improve instead of regressing. Looks like there really are geniuses in this world. You must have suffered too much when you were young, and the heavens gave you a good bone structure as compensation. Qin Xiong could not understand Li Zixuan's natural laziness, but his progress in martial arts far exceeded that of his peers. After thinking about it, he could only explain it to himself. Li Zixuan tilted his head and thought about it. He felt that Qin Xiong's words made a lot of sense. There was a kind of creature in this world that could not be judged by common sense, and that was a genius. Looks like I'm a genius too, Li Zixuan thought smugly in his heart. Uncle Qin, how much of the set of martial arts that I showed you just now did you remember? After joking for a while, Li Zixuan returned to the topic at hand. He had wasted too much time just now, and now he was a little anxious. Oh, I remember the movements, but the concept of the fist. Qin Xiong stroked his beard and said seriously, Little Xian, you probably haven't practiced Taiji fist in a long time, right? When this old man first saw it, he felt that it was soft, powerless, and ordinary. But as you gradually improved, this old man realized that each of your punches seemed to contain the charm of Tao. It's not difficult for me to imitate the movements you just did, but I'm afraid it's very difficult for me to execute the concept you just showed. Li Zixuan nodded. Qin Xiong was indeed a martial arts expert who had once entered the Grandmaster realm. Although his strength had declined because of his body, his eyesight was still there. He could see the difficult part of Taiji fist at a glance. Fist intent. Fist intent was illusory and had to be comprehended by oneself. The reason why Li Zixuan could understand the fist intent of Taiji fist so quickly was inseparable from his body's 8 years of Taoist culture. At this moment, facing Qin Xiong's question, he organized his words and said, "Uncle Qin, it's not difficult to execute that concept, but it's also not difficult to say that it's not difficult either. It all depends on one's own understanding. I can only share my experience with you." "Speak. I'm all ears," Qin Xiong said seriously. Li Zixuan said slowly, "Taiji is the state before heaven and earth were created and before the chaos was divided into yin and yang. When practicing Taiji fist, although the body is moving, the heart must be calm, the qi must be restrained, the spirit must be relaxed, the heart must be the command, the qi must be the flag, the spirit must be the commander, and the body must be the driver. Pay attention to it all the time and you will gain something. First in the heart, then in the body. Then in the body you will know how to dance with the hands and step with the feet. As the saying goes, one must give up oneself and follow others. If one fails, one can pull 1,000 pounds with 4 tails. You must know that when one moves, there is nothing that is not moving. When one is still, there is nothing that is not still. When the other party does not move, you will not move. When the other party moves, you will move first. When the other party moves, you will move first. When the other party moves, you will move first. When you rely on others, you must know yourself well. When you turn around, you will be able to follow others. When you stick to others, you will not be behind or in front." Chapter 4:15. After explaining the essence and profundity of Taiji fist to Qin Xiong at Qin Manor, Li Zixuan saw that old Master Qin had practiced it in a decent manner and felt that it was not bad. Then, he left with Han Yushi. Thinking of the endless light in Qin Xiong's eyes when they parted, Li Zixuan guessed that the Qin Manor would not be peaceful for the next 2 days. Because the old master had a new toy again, he would probably be having fun. But this way, it was better than letting him play with the more than 130 kilograms of gold. At least he wouldn't hurt anyone when he practiced Taiji fist. At the same time, he was thinking in his heart that after accompanying his wife home today, he would have to study Taiji fist a few times. Maybe he could really comprehend Taiji fist from the profound meaning of Taiji and break through to the Grandmaster level in one go? In that case, his mental strength would be even stronger, and he would be able to create even more awesome big treasures. In a while, they would be going to the Han Manor. Li Zixuan had to go home and choose a batch of gifts. Because they were going to the Qin Manor first, they couldn't bring the gifts for the Han family to the Qin Manor, and then bring them out, right? Although Qin Xiong wouldn't mind, it wouldn't look good on his face. Driving the carriage quickly back to the Li Manor, Madame Li had already prepared the gift. There were a total of 10 carriages, with copper coins, snacks, and silk. The 10 carriages were neatly lined up, and the coachman and servants were all in place. Once Li Zixuan returned home, he immediately set off with the carriages. Previously, Li Zixuan had heard from Han Yushi that Han Lijing had spent all his fortune to give his daughter a dowry. It wasn't that Han Yushi took the initiative to ask for money for her family. She still understood the principle of following the husband after marriage. She only slightly expressed her worries about her father's future in front of Li Zixuan. The rest of the situation was investigated by Li Zixuan himself. Not only did he marry his beautiful daughter that he had raised for more than 10 years to you, but he also gave you all his fortune. After knowing that there was actually such an honest father-in-law in the world, Li Zixuan was really touched, and he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He didn't lack money now. It wasn't worth it for Han Lijing to do this. Therefore, he discussed with his parents and decided to bring more gifts when he returned home today. On one hand, it was to help Han Lijing's family. He couldn't let his father-in-law not even be able to afford food after marrying his daughter, right? If the news spread, where would the Li family put their face? On the other hand, it was to give benefits to the villagers of the Han family. After all, when the Han family was at its most difficult time, Han Yushi had eaten hundreds of meals in the village. This time, she could be considered to have returned to her hometown in glory, right? The family had to have the right to show off. And couldn't be stingy. The Han family was clearly prepared for this. Knowing that Li Zixuan probably brought more than one person today, Han Tianhu invited the two village women with the best cooking skills in the village to the house. He was a rough man in the army, so his cooking skills were naturally not good. Then, he invited 4 or 5 young men to help move the table, choose the vegetables, and wash the dishes. The small courtyard of the Han family immediately became crowded. As Li Zixuan's eldest disciple and brother-in-law, although Iron Egg's feelings were a little complicated, he was still willing to help. He was everywhere in the courtyard, the hall, the kitchen. They're here. They're here. They're here. Uncle Han, young master and big sister Yushi are here. A chubby boy with snot running down his nose came bouncing in, making a big fuss. It was one of Iron Egg's playmates, Erniu. Smack. Slug didn't even have time to ask for a reward before he was slapped on the head. Little brat, you have no respect for your elders. What did I tell you before? You have to call her young madam. Who are you to call big sister Yushi? It was the Niu family's woman, Ernia's mother, Feng Chunmei. She and Lu Yue were considered the village women with the best cooking skills in the village. Today, Han Lijing invited the two of them to cook. She had just come out and was about to take some washed vegetables. When she heard her son shouting, she immediately became angry, so she went forward and scolded him. Cough cough. Old Niu's family, why do you have to be like this? Erniu is not wrong. What young madam and young madam? My girl has eaten your family's food before. Come, Erniu, come here. Han Tianhu walked over and pulled Snot over. He asked with a smile, Erniu, where are Xiao Xian and the others now? Li Zheng. The Niu family's woman wanted to say more, but Han Tianhu waved his hand to stop her. Uncle Han, when Erniu came, young master and the others had already arrived at the village entrance. They should be here soon. Erniu blinked and said, Haha, good. I'll reward you with a drumstick. Han Lijing laughed loudly. A drumstick appeared out of nowhere and stuffed it into Erniu's hands without any explanation. Erniu was stunned. Then, he looked at his mother. Seeing that his mother did not object, he happily took the drumstick and ran out. He must have gone to taste the delicious food with his brother, Dainiu. Father! Erniu was right. In a short while, Han Yushi appeared at the entrance of the courtyard holding Li Zixuan's hand. Looking at her old father in the courtyard, Han Yushi's eyes were filled with tears. In just a few days, she had changed from the daughter of this family to the wife of another family. Returning to this small courtyard where she had lived for more than 10 years, the bits and pieces of the past could not help but appear in her mind. It was really a mixture of feelings. Io, daughter, you're back? How have you been these days? Looking at his daughter holding hands with Li Zixuan, how could Han Lijing not have mixed feelings in his heart? It was said that a daughter was the flesh of a father's heart. These words were really not false at all. He resisted the sourness in his eyes and quickly walked closer with a smile. Father, daughter is very good. Husband and parents-in-law also treat daughter very well. You don't have to worry. Han Yushi said softly. Good, good, good. That's good. Han Tianhu laughed with relief. Son-in-law pays his respects to father-in-law. Li Zixuan smiled and cupped his hands in greeting. Han Lijing was overjoyed and hurriedly said, No need to be so polite, no need to be so polite. Quickly go in and sit. Iron Egg, why are you still in a daze, you brat? Quickly go and get some water. Father, there's no hurry. We've brought a lot of gifts for the villagers this time. I'll take the opportunity to go to the village with my husband to distribute these gifts to everyone. We'll come back for dinner later." Han Yushi did not forget her other mission today and quickly said, Oh, that's fine. Iron Egg. Quickly pack up and help your sister deliver the gifts." Han Tianhu was stunned. He turned around and shouted at Iron Egg. "Io, young madam is really considerate. She even brought us gifts?" The Niu family's woman, Feng Chunmei, was all smiles as she complimented. "Auntie Feng, what young madam? You can just call me Yushi. We only brought some snacks and cloth to satisfy the children in the village. At the same time, we can also cut a few new clothes. It's not worth much." Han Yushi hurriedly waved her hands. She was really not used to these people who had been with her day and night suddenly calling her young madam. Chapter 4:16. Han Yushi, Li Zixuan, and Iron Egg led a group of servants and pulled 6 carts of gifts. The other 4 carts were naturally sent to the Han family, to the villagers of the Han family manor to send warmth from house to house. "Io, there's too much, too much. Young master, young mistress, you can't accept this." A woman in her 30s in green looked at the heavy package of gifts in her hands and quickly rejected it. "Haha. Aunt Shioha, just take it. Every household has so much, and you're not the only one who's special. Take it quickly." Li Zixuan saw that behind the woman in green, 3 little boys and a little girl were staring at the package in their hands. Obviously, the 4 children had sharp noses and smelled the fragrance of the snacks in the package. Hence, he smiled and pushed the gifts back. He saw himself in the eyes of the children when he was young in his previous life. Back then, he had also experienced such a difficult life. "Yes, Aunt Shioha, take it quickly. There's only some snacks and cloth inside. It's not worth much. You can also use the cloth inside to make some clothes for Damao, Ermao, and the others, right?" Han Yushi smiled faintly. Although Han Yushi said that these things were not worth much, that was not the case. How could the gifts from the Li family not be worth much? The things inside were worth at least 7 or 8 strings of coins. To an ordinary villager, it was a huge fortune. "Thank you, young master, young mistress." The woman in green hesitated for a moment before taking the package. She turned around and said to the children, "Damao, Ermao, San Mao, Mao Mao, come over and kowtow to young master and young mistress." The 4 children of different sizes came over to kneel. Although Li Zixuan was quite shocked by their names, his reaction was not slow. He quickly waved his hand and said, "Aunt Shioha, there's no need. We still have to rush to the next house. Goodbye." After saying that, he pulled Han Yushi and slipped away. He did not know why, but he did not like kneeling to others, nor did he like others kneeling to him. Hence, he could only slip away quickly. The next stop was the Hu family. Now, the Hu family could be considered to be living a good life. Not only were their son and daughter's illnesses cured, they no longer needed to go bankrupt to see a doctor. Moreover, their family had earned quite a lot of money through Hu Zhen's training classes for the children of the Han village and Plum village. The dilapidated courtyard walls made of reeds were gone and replaced with green brick walls. The crumbling courtyard door was also replaced with a brand new vermilion wooden door. From afar, although it was far from the grandeur of a rich family's courtyard, at least in this countryside, it could be called a well-off family. A few days ago, when Li Zixuan came to the Han village to fetch the bride, he was on a mission, so he didn't have time to visit old Hu's house. Today, when he came to take a look, he was immediately shocked. "Yo, Uncle Hu is going to be rich. The place we live in is different from before." When Li Zixuan arrived at the entrance of the Hu clan's residence, he was immediately delighted to see the grand gate and courtyard in the countryside. "Husband, what are you talking about? Uncle Hu and Aunt Lu have suffered for so many years, and it wasn't easy for them to enjoy the fruits of their labor. What's wrong with renovating the house? Han Yushi pinched Li Zishuan's big hand and pouted coquettishly. Ha ha. I didn't say anything. I can't be happier that my family's villagers can live a good life. Wife, don't think of me as such a petty person. Actually, your husband doesn't have great ambitions, but I do have a small dream. That is, as long as I can lead the villagers of the Han village and Plum village to live a life with clothes to wear, food to eat, and a house to live in, I will be satisfied. Li Zishuan ignored his wife's resistance and put his arm around her shoulders with a smile. When he was delivering gifts along the way, he realized that the villagers of the Han village were living a much better life compared to the first time he came here a few months ago. Not every family could be like the Hu clan, but basically every family could afford to eat meat on a daily basis. Although the children's clothes were patched up, it was still much better than before when they didn't have any clothes to wear at all. Moreover, after visiting so many families, he didn't see any malnourished children anymore. In the past, at least 9 out of 10 children were malnourished and emaciated. No matter how others looked at him, he had finally done something that he could for this group of simple and kind villagers. Now, he was one step closer to his small dream. Although I am very touched that my husband thinks this way, I still feel that my husband should put his energy into bigger things. The more capable my husband is, the greater his responsibility will be. There will be more people that my husband needs to protect. Han Yushi pondered for a moment before looking up and speaking. Ha ha. My husband, I will have a good talk with you when we get back. Let's go in first. Li Zishuan pulled Han Yushi and went forward to push open the courtyard door. He saw that the courtyard had also changed. The dilapidated house from before had basically been renovated. Hu Qian was sitting on the stone table in the courtyard, hugging a book and muttering something in a low voice. Li Zishuan listened carefully for a moment and immediately understood that this child was recognizing Chinese characters. Ha ha. As expected. Are you learning Pinyin? Li Zishuan walked closer and said with a smile. This child was really engrossed in his studies. He didn't even notice that someone had walked up to him, so Li Zishuan could only interrupt him. Ah, young master. Hu Qian looked up and was shocked when he saw who it was. He quickly stood up and shouted. What's wrong? Priest's son didn't cure your illness last time? Li Zishuan frowned and asked. He remembered that Sun Simiao had directly cured Hu Qian's stuttering previously. Why was this child still stuttering now? I'm cured, young master. Hu Qian was so anxious that his face turned red as he explained. Li Zishuan was full of question marks. He was cured just like that? Who was he kidding? Han Yushi couldn't help but cover her mouth and laugh. My husband, let Hu Qian rest first. He hasn't seen you for a long time. He must be so excited that he can't speak clearly now. His previous illness has really been cured. Everyone in the village has heard him speak normally. Yes, Yushi. Sister Yushi is, right? Indeed. I was a little nervous just now. Hu Qian nodded in agreement. Li Zishuan was speechless. He had become the culprit? The commotion outside eventually alarmed Hu Hanyun, who was making lunch for his son in the kitchen. He had been a soldier when he was young, so he still had this level of vigilance. Hey, young master, you. Young madam, why are you here? Quick, sit inside. You really are too much. Why didn't you come in and let me know when young master came? Han Lijing was pleasantly surprised when he saw Li Zishuan and Han Yushi. Haha. Uncle Hu, why are you still being so polite with me? We won't sit. Yushi and I are here to give you something to thank you and Aunt Lu for working so hard for our wedding these few days. This little gift is also a token of our appreciation. Please accept it quickly. We still have to go for the homecoming banquet. Li Zishuan called for the servant behind him to carry a box of gifts in. Old Hu's family had been busy preparing the house and sending the bride off personally. Of course, the gifts they gave were more expensive. No one said anything when Li Zishuan did something to them. Hey, how can I accept this? Young master, Old Hu, can't accept these. Hey, young master, don't go. Ha ha. Uncle Hu, let him learn to read properly. I'll send him to school in the future. This child will definitely be successful in the future. Li Zishuan's laughter came from outside the door. This fellow couldn't be bothered to decline. He hugged Han Yushi's waist and slipped away with the orchid butterfly steps. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.